A Chinese woman stands alone in the dying light of an American frontier town, her last hope buried in the dust. The townspeople turn their backs. The night closes in. She has nowhere to go until a cowboy makes a choice that will defy everything this town believes. This is a story of survival, scandal, and a love that refused to break. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. Lin Yue had crossed an ocean to reach hell. The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of what the driver called Red Hollow, though hollow seemed too generous a word for this collection of sun-bleached buildings squatting in the dirt like they were ashamed to be there. Dust hung in the air, thick enough to taste, and the heat pressed down on everything with the weight of a grudge. She stepped down onto the street, her legs stiff from days of travel, and felt the town's attention land on her like a fist. It wasn't curiosity in their eyes, it was calculation. She was small, dark-haired, dressed in clothing that marked her as foreign before she even opened her mouth. The trunk she carried was light, everything she owned in the world fit inside it, which told its own sad story. A woman alone. A Chinese woman. In a place where being either one was trouble enough. The driver dumped her belongings in the street without ceremony and climbed back onto his perch. "Good luck," he said, and the way he said it made clear he didn't think luck would be enough. Lin Yue watched the stagecoach pull away, taking with it the last thread connecting her to anything familiar. Then she turned and started walking. Her relative's name was written on a piece of paper she'd been carrying since she left Guangdong. Zhang Wei. He owned a laundry, the letter had said. A good business. A new life waiting for her in America, where things were different, where hard work mattered more than the family you were born into. She'd believed that. She'd needed to believe it. The laundry wasn't hard to find. Red Hollow had one main street, and most of the buildings on it looked like they'd been put up in a hurry and hadn't been touched since. The laundry was a narrow shop wedged between a general store and a saloon, its windows filmed with old soap and grime. A sign hung crooked above the door. The characters were faded but still readable. She pushed the door open and a bell chimed, thin and uncertain. Inside, a white man looked up from behind the counter. He was middle-aged, balding, with the kind of face that had settled into permanent suspicion. He took one look at her, and his expression soured further. "We don't serve your kind here," he said. Lin Yue blinked. "I am looking for Zhang Wei." "Well, you're about 6 months too late for that." He turned back to the shirt he was folding, making it clear the conversation was over. But Lin Yue stayed where she was. "He is dead?" The man sighed like she was interrupting something important. "Yeah, fever took him last winter. I bought the place from his estate." He glanced at her again, and something that might have been pity flickered across his face before he snuffed it out. "You family?" "Yes." "Then I'm sorry for your loss, but there's nothing here for you." The words hit harder than they should have. Lin Yue had prepared herself for many things on this journey: illness, exhaustion, loneliness. But not this. Not arriving to find the only person who knew her name already buried in foreign ground. She stood there, holding her trunk, and felt the future she'd been carrying collapse into nothing. "Is there—" Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. She cleared her throat and tried again. "Is there anyone else? Anyone who knew him?" The man shook his head. "Kept to himself mostly. Worked hard, didn't cause trouble. That's about all anybody knew." He folded the last shirt and set it on a pile. "Look, I don't mean to be harsh, but you can't stay here. This town's got enough problems without—" He caught himself, but not quickly enough. "Without what?" "Without complications." He walked to the door and held it open. "There's a boarding house 2 streets over. Mrs. Halstead runs it. Maybe she'll have a room." Lin Yu walked past him without another word. Outside, the sun was lower, but the heat hadn't broken. She made her way through streets that all looked the same, dirt, wood, and hostility, until she found the boarding house. It was a 2-story structure that leaned slightly to the left, paint peeling from its walls like old skin. Mrs. Halstead answered the door. She was a thin woman with gray hair pulled back so tight it looked painful, and her mouth was set in a line that suggested smiling was something she'd given up years ago. "I need a room," Lin Yue said. Mrs. Halstead's eyes traveled over her slowly, taking inventory. "No rooms available." "The sign says—" "I know what the sign says." The woman's voice was flat. No rooms for you? The door closed. Lin Yu stood on the porch for a moment, her hands gripping the handle of her trunk hard enough to hurt. Then she turned and walked back to the main street. She tried 2 more places. A small hotel near the edge of town where the owner took one look at her and said he was full up. A house with a room-to-let notice in the window where a woman opened the door, saw her face, and said, "We don't take in strangers." By the time the sun started its final descent, Lin Yue had stopped asking. She found a bench outside the general store and sat down. Her trunk rested at her feet. People passed by. Men in dusty boots and wide-brimmed hats, women in plain dresses carrying baskets, and not one of them met her eyes. She might as well have been invisible, except she knew she wasn't. She could feel their awareness of her, the way they gave her a wide berth, the way conversations dropped to whispers as they walked past. The sky turned orange, then pink, then a deep bruised purple. The temperature finally started to drop, but it didn't bring relief. It just meant the night was coming, and she had nowhere to go. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. The weeks at sea, packed into the hold of a ship with dozens of other Chinese laborers and their families, all of them chasing the same desperate hope. The railway stations, the strangers, the language she'd learned from books, but that sounded wrong when people actually spoke it. Every mile had been hard. Every step had cost something. And now, at the end of it all, she was sitting on a bench in a town that didn't want her, watching the light die. For the first time since leaving home, Lin Yue let herself wonder if she'd made a terrible mistake. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the letters. There were 3 of them, creased and soft from being read too many times. Zhang Wei had written them over the course of 2 years, each one painting a picture of America that had seemed too bright to be real. But she'd believed anyway. She'd believed because the alternative, staying in a village where every door was closed to her, where her future was nothing but more of the same grinding poverty, had been unbearable. Come to America, he'd written. Here, if you work hard, you can build something. Here, the past doesn't matter as much as what you do tomorrow. She folded the letters carefully and put them away. The street was nearly empty now. Lights flickered in windows. Somewhere a dog barked. Lin Yue pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders and tried to think. She had a little money left, enough for a few meals maybe, but money wouldn't buy her a room in this town, and it wouldn't get her anywhere else. The nearest city was days away by stagecoach, and even if she could afford the ticket, what would be waiting for her there? More strangers, more closed doors. She was trapped. The realization settled over her like the night itself, cold, absolute, and utterly indifferent. She'd been sitting there for maybe an hour when she heard boots on the wooden planks of the sidewalk. She didn't look up. Another person walking past, another reminder that she didn't belong here. But the footsteps stopped. "You planning to sleep out here?" The voice was male, low and rough around the edges, with an accent she was starting to recognize as local. Lin Yue looked up. The man standing in front of her was tall, broad-shouldered, maybe in his early 30s. He wore a dusty shirt, worn trousers, and a hat that had seen better days. His face was tanned from sun and wind, with lines around his eyes that suggested he spent most of his time squinting at the horizon. He wasn't handsome in any conventional sense. His features were too blunt for that, his jaw too square. But there was something solid about him, something that made you think he didn't move unless he meant to. Lin Yu straightened her back. "I have nowhere else to go." The man studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he glanced down the empty street and back at her. "You're the one who came looking for Zhang Wei." It wasn't a question. News traveled fast in small towns. "Yes. Heard he died." "So I am told." The man shifted his weight, and Lin Yu caught something in his posture. Not quite discomfort, but something close to it, like he was wrestling with a decision he hadn't planned to make. "Name's Cole Mercer," he said finally. "I've got a ranch about 5 miles out. It's not much, but it's got walls and a roof." He paused. "You can stay there tonight. Figure things out in the morning." Lin Yu stared at him. In her experience, men didn't offer help to women they didn't know without expecting something in return. The kindness in his voice didn't make her trust him more. It made her more wary. "Why would you do this?" Cole shrugged. "Because it's going to be a cold night, and you're going to freeze to death out here." "You do not know me." "No, I don't." He met her eyes, and there was something direct in his gaze, something that didn't flinch away. But I know this town, and I know what happens to people who get left outside its gates. He gestured toward her trunk. You don't have to come, but the offer's there. He turned and started walking toward a wagon parked at the end of the street. Lin Yu sat frozen for a moment, her mind cycling through possibilities. This could be a trap. He could be dangerous. But then again, staying here was its own kind of danger. Slower, colder, but just as certain. She grabbed her trunk and followed him. The wagon was old but well-maintained, the kind of vehicle built for work rather than comfort. Cole loaded her trunk into the back without comment, then climbed onto the driver's seat. Lin Yue hesitated for just a second before climbing up beside him. He clicked his tongue and the horses started moving. They rode in silence for a while. The town fell away behind them, swallowed by darkness, and soon there was nothing but open country, flat stretches of scrubland dotted with brush, the occasional silhouette of a distant hill. The moon was bright enough to see by, turning everything silver and strange. You came a long way to find nothing, Cole said eventually. Yes. Got any plans? Lin Yue looked out at the empty land. No. Cole nodded like that was the answer he'd expected. Well, one problem at a time, I guess. The ranch appeared gradually, resolving out of the darkness like something conjured. It was modest, a single-story house made of wood and stone, a barn, a few outbuildings. Fences marked off areas for livestock, though Lin Yu couldn't see any animals in the dark. It looked like the kind of place that took constant work to keep from falling apart. Cole brought the wagon to a stop in front of the house and jumped down. He grabbed her trunk like it weighed nothing and carried it to the door. Inside, the house was plain but clean. A main room with a fireplace, a table, a few chairs, a small kitchen area in the back, 2 doors that presumably led to bedrooms. It smelled like wood smoke and leather and something faintly herbal Lin Yu couldn't identify. Cole set her trunk down and lit a lamp. The warm light pushed back the shadows, making the space feel almost welcoming. You can take the room on the left, he said. I'll be in the other one. There's water in the pitcher if you need it, and I'll make breakfast in the morning. He paused at the door to his own room. Lock your door if it makes you feel safer. I won't bother you. Then he disappeared into the other room, leaving Lin Yue standing alone in the lamplight. She stood there for a long moment, listening to the silence of the house. Then she picked up her trunk, carried it into the small bedroom, and closed the door behind her. The room was sparse. A bed, a washstand, a single window with curtains drawn. Lin Yu set the trunk down and sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress was thin but better than the ground outside. She took off her shoes and lay down fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. Sleep didn't come easily. Every sound made her tense, the creak of the house settling, the wind against the windows, the faint movement from the other room that meant Cole was still awake too. She kept expecting him to knock on the door, to reveal that the kindness had been a lie, and the price was going to be extracted now. But the knock never came. Eventually, exhaustion won out, and Lin Yu fell into a shallow, uneasy sleep. She woke to the smell of coffee. Pale morning light filtered through the curtains. Lin Yu sat up, disoriented for a moment, before remembering where she was. She could hear movement in the main room, the clink of dishes, the scrape of a chair. She put her shoes back on and opened the door. Cole was standing at the stove, frying eggs in a cast-iron pan. He'd already set the table with 2 plates, 2 cups, and a pot of coffee that looked strong enough to strip paint. He glanced over his shoulder when he heard her. Morning. Hope you like eggs. It's about all I've got right now. Lin Yu sat down at the table without a word. Cole brought the pan over and slid an egg onto her plate, then one onto his own. He poured coffee for both of them and sat down across from her. They ate in silence for a while. The eggs were overcooked and the coffee was bitter, but Lin Yue had eaten far worse. She found herself watching Cole out of the corner of her eye, trying to read him. He ate methodically, like it was just another task to complete, and didn't seem bothered by the lack of conversation. Finally, he set down his fork. So, what are you planning to do? Lin Yue took a sip of coffee to buy herself time. I do not know yet. You got any skills? Anything you're good at? I can cook, clean, sew. She paused. I know some medicine, herbs and remedies my mother taught me. Cole nodded slowly, turning this over in his mind. The town's not going to make things easy for you. I noticed. He searched for the right word. Suspicious. of outsiders, especially outsiders, who look different. You're not. I'm not what? Suspicious of me. Cole leaned back in his chair, studying her. I figure people are mostly trying to get by, same as everyone else. The rest of it, where they came from, what they look like, doesn't change that. He picked up his coffee cup. Besides, I've seen what this town does to people it decides it doesn't like. Doesn't sit right with me. There was something in the way he said it that suggested he'd seen it up close. Lin Yu wanted to ask, but before she could, Cole stood up. I've got work to do. You can stay here while you figure things out. There's food in the pantry, and if you need anything, just holler. He grabbed his hat from a peg by the door. Don't feel like you have to hide in your room. This is a working ranch, not a prison. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a soft thud. Lin Yu sat alone at the table, staring at her half-eaten breakfast. She didn't understand this man. His kindness felt real, but it also felt dangerous. Not because she thought he would hurt her, but because she was starting to rely on it. And relying on anyone in this country had proven to be a mistake. She cleaned up the dishes, washed them in the basin, and put them away. Then, because sitting idle made her nervous, she started looking around the house. It didn't take long to see that Cole lived alone and had been doing so for a while. The main room was functional but neglected. Dust on the shelves, cobwebs in the corners, a general air of a place where someone slept and ate but didn't really live. The kitchen had the basics, but nothing more. No decorations, no personal touches, nothing that suggested this was a home rather than just a structure. Lin Yu found a broom in the corner and started sweeping. It was automatic, the kind of work her hands knew how to do without thinking. Sweep the floor, wipe down the table, straighten the chairs, simple tasks that imposed order on chaos. She moved through the house methodically, and with each stroke of the broom she felt herself settling slightly, finding a rhythm. By the time Cole came back for lunch, the house looked different, cleaner, more intentional. He stopped in the doorway and looked around, his expression unreadable. Then he took off his hat and hung it on the peg. You didn't have to do that. I know. He walked to the table and sat down heavily, like the morning had taken something out of him. I appreciate it, though. Lin Yue brought over bread and cheese she'd found in the pantry and set them on the table. Cole tore off a piece of bread and ate it without ceremony. How big is the ranch? Lin Yue asked. About 200 acres. Most of it's grazing land for cattle, but I've got some horses too. It's not a big operation, but it's mine. He glanced at her. Why? I'm trying to understand what kind of work you do. Cole shrugged. The kind that never ends. Mending fences, checking on the herd, fixing things that break. It's just me, so I'm always behind. You have no help? Had a hand for a while, but he moved on last year. Haven't found anyone to replace him. He paused. Town folks don't much like working for me. Why? Because I don't much like the town. He said it matter-of-factly, like it was just a simple truth. We keep our distance from each other. Works better that way. Lin Yue absorbed this. Cole was an outsider too in his own way. Different reasons, but the same result. Isolation. They finished the meal in silence. When Cole stood to leave again, Lin Yue found herself speaking before she'd really thought it through. I can help. He turned. What? With the work. I can help. Cole looked at her for a long moment. You don't owe me anything. I know, but I do not like sitting idle. Something shifted in his expression, not quite a smile, but close. All right, there's laundry that needs doing, and the garden's completely overgrown. If you want to take a crack at either of those, be my guest. He left, and Lin Yue went outside to assess the damage. The garden was worse than overgrown. It was a battlefield where weeds had won decisively. But there were still some herbs struggling to survive, and the soil looked good under all the neglect. Lin Yu found some tools in the barn and got to work. The sun was brutal and her back started aching within an hour, but she kept going. There was something satisfying about pulling weeds, about clearing away the things that didn't belong and making space for what did. Her hands blistered and her clothes stuck to her skin with sweat, but she didn't stop until the sun started to sink. When Cole came back that evening, the garden was transformed. Not perfect, but recognizable as something intentional rather than chaos. He stood looking at it for a long moment. Then he looked at her, and this time he did smile. Small, but real. You're stubborn, he said. Yes, that's good. You'll need to be. That night they ate together again. Cole cooked, or rather, heated up some stew that had clearly been sitting for a few days, and they sat across from each other at the table. The silence between them was starting to feel less awkward, more like two people who were figuring out how to exist in the same space.
Kai.
"And I ask you something," Lin Yue said. "Sure. Why did you help me?" Cole set down his spoon and considered the question. "My wife died 3 years ago," he said finally. "Childbirth. The baby, too." His voice was steady, but Lin Yue could hear the weight underneath it. "For a while after that, I was not in a good place. In this town, most people either avoided me or tried to fix me, and I didn't want either. But there was one person, old man who lived on the edge of town, who just left food on my porch. Never said anything about it, never asked for anything back. Just made sure I didn't starve while I was too wrecked to care." He picked up his spoon again. "He died last year, and I guess I figured if I ever got the chance to do the same for someone else, I should take it." Lin Yu didn't know what to say to that. In the end, she settled for the simplest truth. "Thank you," Cole nodded. "You're welcome." The days started to develop a pattern. Cole would work the ranch, and Lin Yu would work the house and garden. She learned where he kept things, how he liked his coffee, what times he came and went. He learned that she was quiet but not timid, that she didn't complain, and that she had a will made of iron wrapped in silk. A week passed. Then 2. Lin Yu knew she should be planning her next move, figuring out where to go from here. But the truth was, she didn't have anywhere to go. And more than that, she didn't particularly want to leave. Here, on this isolated ranch, she'd found something she hadn't expected. Not happiness exactly, but a kind of peace. A place where she could work and be useful and not have to constantly brace herself against other people's hostility. Cole never asked when she was leaving. He seemed content to let her stay, and she was grateful for it. But peace, as Lin Yu was learning, was always temporary. It was a Saturday when everything changed. Cole needed supplies from town: flour, salt, some parts for a broken piece of equipment. He usually went alone, but this time Lin Yu asked if she could come. "You sure about that?" Cole asked. "Town's not going to roll out the welcome mat." "I need to see it again. I cannot hide forever." Cole looked like he wanted to argue, but instead he just nodded. "All right, but stay close to me." They took the wagon into Red Hollow, arriving mid-morning when the streets were busy. Lin Yue felt the change immediately, the way conversations stopped when people saw her, the way eyes followed her with open suspicion. She kept her head up and her expression neutral, but inside her stomach was knotted tight. Cole went into the general store and she followed. The owner, a portly man with a mustache that looked like a caterpillar had died on his upper lip, glanced at Cole and then at Lin Yu. His face hardened. "She can't be in here," he said. Cole's voice went flat. "She's with me." "I don't care if she's with the president. I don't serve, then I'll take my business elsewhere." Cole turned toward the door. The owner hesitated. Cole was clearly a regular customer, and in a town this small, regular customers mattered. "Fine," he said grudgingly, "but she touches anything, you're paying for it." They got what they needed in tense silence. Lin Yue could feel the owner's eyes on her the entire time, like he expected her to pocket something. It made her skin crawl. They were loading the supplies into the wagon when a woman's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Well, well, Cole Mercer keeping a Chinese whore now?" Lin Yue turned. The woman standing on the sidewalk was tall and expensively dressed, with blonde hair piled high, and a face that might have been pretty if it wasn't twisted with contempt. She was flanked by 2 other women who looked like lesser versions of her. Same superior expressions, same cold eyes. Cole's jaw clenched. "Watch your mouth, Margaret." Margaret, the blonde woman, laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Oh, I'm sorry. Is that not what she is?" "Then what exactly is she doing living at your ranch?" A small crowd was starting to gather, drawn by the promise of confrontation like flies to rot. "That's none of your business," Cole said. "It's everyone's business when you bring your shame into town." Margaret's eyes raked over Lin Yue with open disgust. "We all know what men like you want from women like her. At least have the decency to keep it hidden." Lin Yue felt something cold settle in her chest. She'd heard insults before, had heard them her entire life in different languages, but this was different. This was public, intentional, designed to humiliate. Cole took a step toward Margaret, and for a moment Lin Yu thought he might do something reckless. But he stopped himself, his hands balling into fists at his sides. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Don't I?" Margaret smiled, and it was cruel. "Face it, Cole. Your wife's been dead for years, and you've gotten lonely. Can't say I blame you for that, but did you have to bring this thing into our town?" The words hit Lin Yu like a physical blow. She wanted to respond, to defend herself, but her English deserted her in the face of such venom. All she could do was stand there, frozen, while Margaret and her friends laughed. Cole moved suddenly, stepping between Lin Yu and Margaret. "We're done here." He took Lin Yu's arm, gently but firmly, and guided her to the wagon. She climbed up, her face burning with shame and rage, and Cole snapped the reins harder than necessary. The wagon lurched forward. They rode in silence for a long time. Lin Yu stared straight ahead, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had gone white. She could feel tears threatening, but she refused to let them fall. She would not cry, not here, not now. "I'm sorry," Cole said finally. "You did nothing wrong. I should have known better than to bring you into town. I should have—" "Stop." Lin Yu's voice was sharp. "This is not your fault. This is who they are." Cole didn't argue, but she could see the guilt written all over his face. When they got back to the ranch, Lin Yu went straight to her room and closed the door. She sat on the edge of the bed, her whole body shaking with anger and humiliation. Margaret's words kept playing in her mind on an endless loop. Chinese whore, thing, shame. She'd come to America believing that hard work and dignity would be enough. But it wasn't. It would never be enough. Because no matter what she did, no matter how hard she tried, there would always be people like Margaret who saw her as less than human. There was a soft knock on the door. "Lin Yue?" She didn't answer. "I'm going to say something, and I need you to listen." Cole's voice was muffled by the door, but she could hear the determination in it. What Margaret said, it's not true. None of it. You're not what she called you. And anyone who knows you for more than 5 minutes can see that. Lin Yu closed her eyes. "I know this town. I know how they think. And I know that as long as you're living here, they're going to talk. They're going to assume the worst. And I'm sorry for that because you don't deserve it." Silence. "But here's the thing." Cole paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "I don't care what they think. You can stay here as long as you need to. And if anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with me." Lin Yu heard his footsteps retreat, heard the front door open and close. She sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. That night, she didn't come out for dinner. She stayed in her room, wrestling with the question that had been growing louder and louder in her mind. How long could this last? How long before Cole's kindness curdled into resentment? How long before the town's pressure became too much? She had no answers. Only the cold certainty that she was living on borrowed time, and sooner or later the debt would come due. In the main room, Cole sat alone at the table, staring at a cold plate of food he had no appetite for. He'd meant what he said to Lin Yue. He didn't care what the town thought, but he also knew, better than she did, just how vicious Red Hollow could be when it decided someone didn't belong. And he had no idea how to protect her from that. The days that followed were strange and strained. Lin Yu threw herself into work with even more intensity, as if she could outrun her own thoughts. Cole watched her push herself too hard and said nothing because he understood the impulse. They were both trying to fix things they couldn't fix, but the town hadn't forgotten. Word of the confrontation with Margaret spread, growing more exaggerated with each retelling. And with each retelling, the story became more certain. Cole Mercer was keeping a Chinese woman at his ranch. The reasons why didn't matter to them. Only the scandal did. 3 weeks after the incident, a group of men rode out to the ranch. Lin Yu saw them coming from the garden and ran to find Cole. He met them in the yard, his expression hard. "What do you want?" The leader was a man named Dutch Harrison, who owned the largest ranch in the area and carried himself like minor royalty. "We need to talk, Cole." "So talk." Dutch glanced at his companions, then back at Cole. "There's been concerns about the situation you've got here." "What situation would that be?" "Don't play stupid. You know exactly what I'm talking about." Dutch jerked his head toward Lin Yue, who was standing near the house. That girl, people are talking. Let them talk. It's not that simple. You're making this whole town look bad, keeping her here like this. People are starting to ask questions. About your character. About your judgment. Cole's voice dropped to something dangerous. My character is none of your concern. It is when it reflects on all of us. Dutch leaned forward in his saddle. Look, I'm trying to be reasonable here. Send her away. There are places in the city where her kind can find work. But keeping her here, it's not right, and it's not going to end well for either of you. Is that a threat? It's friendly advice. Cole stared at him for a long moment. Then he said very clearly, Get off my land. Dutch's face darkened. You're making a mistake. It's mine to make. The men left, but their message hung in the air like smoke. Lin Yu came to stand beside Cole, and they both watched the riders disappear over the horizon. They will not stop, Lin Yu said quietly. I know. Maybe they are right. Maybe I should leave. Cole turned to look at her, and there was something fierce in his eyes. Is that what you want? Lin Yu thought about the question. About the ranch, about the work, about the strange, fragile peace she'd found here. About the man standing next to her who had given her shelter when the whole world had turned its back. No, she said, but what I want does not matter. It matters to me. The words hung between them, heavier than either of them expected. That night, Cole sat at the table long after Lin Yu had gone to bed, turning over the problem in his mind. He knew what the town wanted. He knew what would make things easier. But he also knew that sending Lin Yu away would be wrong. Not just morally wrong, but wrong in a way that would hollow him out. He'd spent 3 years learning to live with loss. He wasn't sure he could learn to live with shame. By the time the sun came up, he'd made his decision. He found Lin Yue in the kitchen making coffee. She looked up when he came in, and something in his expression made her go still. I've been thinking, Cole said, about what Dutch said, about what the town thinks. Lin Yu's face became carefully blank. I understand. I will leave. No. Cole cut her off. That's not... Listen. There's only one way to stop the talk. Only one way to make it clear that this isn't what they think it is. What is that? Cole took a breath. We get married. Lin Yu stared at him like he'd lost his mind. What? Think about it. Right now, they see you as something shameful, something I'm hiding. But if you're my wife, legally, officially, they can't say that anymore. They'd have to accept it. You want to marry me to stop gossip? I want to marry you to protect you. Cole ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with his own inability to explain. Look, it doesn't have to be real. It's just a solution to a problem. Lin Yu's mind was reeling. Marriage. To a man she'd known for less than 2 months, a man who was offering her safety but not love, protection but not partnership. This is insane, she said. Yeah, probably. Cole met her eyes. But it might work. Lin Yu turned away, gripping the edge of the counter. Every instinct told her this was wrong, that accepting this offer would trap her in a different kind of prison. But another part of her, the part that had crossed an ocean, that had survived weeks alone, that had refused to break even when the whole world seemed determined to see her fall, that part was calculating. If she left, where would she go? Back to the city, to try her luck among strangers who would be just as cruel? Back to China, admitting defeat? Or she could stay. She could take this strange, impossible offer and make it work. She could survive. If I say yes, she said slowly, not looking at him, what would you expect from me? Same as now. Keep the house. Help with the ranch if you want. Beyond that, nothing. Nothing? Cole's voice was firm. This would be a marriage on paper, for protection. I'm not asking for anything more than that. Lin Yu finally turned to face him. His expression was open, honest, and completely serious. He meant it. Every word. She thought about Zhang Wei, about the promises that had brought her here and turned to ash. She thought about the bench in Red Hollow, about the cold certainty that she was going to die alone in a foreign country. She thought about Margaret's cruel smile and Dutch Harrison's barely veiled threats. And she thought about the quiet man standing in front of her, offering her the only kind of safety he knew how to give. Yes, she said. Cole nodded once, like they'd just agreed on the price of flour. All right then, I'll ride into town tomorrow and talk to the minister. He left to start his work, and Lin Yu stood alone in the kitchen, wondering what she'd just agreed to. The answer, she would learn, was something far more complicated than either of them had bargained for. But that was still to come. For now, there was only the morning light streaming through the windows, the smell of coffee, and the strange, sharp feeling of having stepped off a cliff without knowing how far the fall would be. The minister's name was Reverend Paul Wickham, and he looked at Cole like he'd just asked to burn down the church. You want to marry her? It wasn't a question. It was an accusation wrapped in disbelief. They were standing in the small office attached to the church, a cramped room that smelled of old books and furniture polish. Cole had his hat in his hands, turning it slowly, a nervous habit he'd picked up as a boy and never quite lost. Yes, sir. The Chinese woman. Her name is Lin Yue. Reverend Wickham sat down heavily in his chair, which creaked in protest. He was in his 50s, with thinning gray hair and the kind of face that looked like it had been designed specifically for expressing disapproval. Mr. Mercer, I've known you for nearly 10 years. I married you and Sarah. I buried her and your child. And in all that time, I've never questioned your judgment, until now. Cole's grip on his hat tightened. I'm not asking for your blessing. I'm asking you to perform a legal ceremony. Do you have any idea what this will do to your standing in this community? I know exactly what it'll do. Then why? The Reverend leaned forward, his voice dropping to something that might have been concern if it wasn't so condescending. Are you being blackmailed, coerced in some way? Cole almost laughed. No, nothing like that. Then I don't understand. You don't have to. Cole set his hat on the desk between them. All you have to do is decide whether you're going to perform the ceremony or whether I need to ride to the next county and find someone who will. Reverend Wickham stared at him for a long moment. Then he sighed, the sound of a man who'd lost an argument he'd never had a chance of winning. When? End of the week, Friday. That's 3 days from now. Yes. You're not going to reconsider? Take some time to think about this? Cole picked up his hat and stood. Friday, he repeated. I'll bring her by tomorrow so you can, I don't know, whatever it is you need to do. He left before the Reverend could mount another objection. The ride back to the ranch gave Cole too much time to think, which was dangerous. He kept circling back to the same question. What the hell was he doing? Getting married to solve a social problem was insane. Getting married to a woman he barely knew was worse. Getting married when his first marriage had ended in a grave was something he'd sworn he'd never do again. But here he was. The truth he couldn't quite articulate, even to himself, was that this wasn't just about protecting Lin Yue from the town's cruelty. It was about something else, something harder to name. In the weeks she'd been living at the ranch, the house had started to feel different. Not like it had when Sarah was alive, that was gone and never coming back, but different in its own way. Like a place where someone actually lived instead of just existed. He'd gotten used to coming home and finding dinner waiting, to clean floors and mended shirts, to the quiet sound of her moving through the rooms, purposeful and steady. He'd gotten used to her, and maybe that should have scared him more than it did. When he got back to the ranch, Lin Yue was in the garden, kneeling in the dirt with her sleeves rolled up. She looked up when she heard the wagon, her face shaded by a wide-brimmed hat he'd given her to keep the sun off. There was dirt on her cheek, and her hands were stained green from pulling weeds. Cole climbed down and walked over. It's done. Friday afternoon. She sat back on her heels. That is very soon. Didn't see the point in waiting. Lin Yue looked down at her dirty hands. What do I need to do? Not much. We need to go see the Reverend tomorrow so he can, I guess, make it official. Ask you some questions, probably. Cole paused. He's not happy about this. I imagine no one will be. No. Cole squatted down beside her, picking up a loose stone and turning it over in his palm. We could still call it off, if you've changed your mind. Lin Yue met his eyes. Have you? No. Then neither have I. They held each other's gaze for a moment, and Cole realized this was probably the closest they'd ever stood to each other. He could see the exact shade of brown in her eyes, could count the freckles the sun had left across her nose despite the hat, could see the determination in the set of her jaw. She wasn't doing this because she had no choice. She was doing it because she'd decided to, and there was a difference. All right then, he said, standing up. Friday it is. That night they ate dinner in a silence that felt heavier than usual. The weight of what they were about to do pressed down on both of them, turning even simple conversation into something fraught with meaning. Finally, Lin Yu set down her fork. Can I ask you something? Why did you never remarry after your wife died? Cole stared at his plate. It wasn't a question he'd expected, and he wasn't sure he had a good answer. Didn't see the point, I guess. She was it for me. We grew up together, got married young. I never thought about being with anyone else. He looked up. After she died, the idea of trying to replace her felt wrong. Still does. I am not trying to replace her. I know, that's not what I meant. Cole rubbed his face, frustrated with his own inability to explain. This is different. You're different. This whole situation is different. Different how? I don't know. It just is. Lin Yu accepted this non-answer with a small nod. My mother wanted me to marry before I left China. There was a man in the village, a merchant's son. Respectable family. Good prospects. She smiled faintly. I said no. Why? Because he looked at me like I was a problem to be solved. A duty to be fulfilled, not a person. She picked up her cup, staring into the tea like it held answers. I thought coming to America would mean I could choose differently, that I would have control over my own life. Cole heard what she wasn't saying. And now you're marrying a stranger to escape a different kind of trap. Yes. She looked at him directly. But at least you do not look at me like I am a problem. What do I look at you like? Lin Yu considered this. Like I am a person who happens to be in your house. Nothing more. Nothing less. Cole wasn't sure if that was a compliment or an indictment, but he supposed it was honest, and honesty counted for something. The next day they rode into town together for the second time. Lin Yu wore her best dress, which wasn't saying much, and Cole wore a clean shirt he'd had to iron himself because he'd never gotten the hang of it, and it showed. They made an awkward pair, and they both knew it. The Reverend's wife, Martha, was waiting when they arrived at the church. She was a plump woman with kind eyes that currently held deep concern. She looked at Lin Yu the way you might look at a stray dog someone had brought into your parlor, sympathetic but wary. Miss, I'm sorry. I don't know your surname, Martha said. Wang, Lin Yu Wang. Miss Wang, won't you come inside? The Reverend performed what Cole assumed was the standard pre-marriage interview, asking Lin Yu if she was entering this union freely, if she understood what she was agreeing to, if she had any reservations. Lin Yu answered each question calmly, her English careful but clear. Yes, she understood. No, she was not being forced. Yes, she knew what marriage meant. The Reverend looked increasingly uncomfortable with each answer, like he'd been hoping she'd give him a reason to refuse. When he couldn't find one, he sighed. Very well, Friday at 2 o'clock. You'll need witnesses. I'll find them, Cole said. Outside, as they were walking back to the wagon, Lin Yu said quietly, He thinks you are making a terrible mistake. Probably. Are you? Cole helped her up onto the wagon seat before answering. Ask me again in a year. They spent the next 2 days preparing in ways that felt absurd given the circumstances. Cole cleaned his one good suit, which smelled like mothballs and regret. Lin Yu took apart one of her dresses and re-sewed it into something that could pass for wedding appropriate if you squinted and had low standards. Neither of them talked about what would happen after the ceremony, whether anything would actually change, or if they'd just go back to their separate rooms and continue the strange dance they'd been doing for weeks. Finding witnesses proved harder than Cole expected. He went through a mental list of everyone he knew in Red Hollow and realized the list was shorter than he'd thought. Most of the men he'd done business with over the years were acquaintances at best, and asking them to witness this particular wedding felt like asking them to take sides in a fight he wasn't sure he could win. In the end, he went to see Tom Bradley, the blacksmith. Tom was a massive man with arms like tree trunks and a face that had been rearranged by bar fights in his younger days. He was also one of the few people in Red Hollow who'd never given Cole grief about keeping his distance from town politics. The smithy was hot and loud, the ring of hammer on metal echoing off the walls. Tom looked up when Cole entered, his face streaked with soot. Cole? Need something fixed? Need a favor, actually. Tom set down his hammer, wiping his hands on a rag that was somehow dirtier than his hands had been. What kind of favor? I'm getting married Friday. Need a witness. Tom's eyebrows went up. Married? To who? The woman who's been staying at my ranch, Lin Yue. The Chinese girl. Tom said it without judgment, just stating a fact. Yeah. Tom studied him for a long moment. You know what people are going to say. I know. You're okay with that? Has to be done. Tom nodded slowly, like Cole had just confirmed something he'd suspected. All right, I'll be there. Just like that? Just like that. Tom picked up his hammer again. I've known you long enough to know you don't do things without a reason. I figure if you're doing this, you've got your reasons. That's good enough for me. Cole felt something loosen in his chest. Thanks, Tom. Don't thank me yet. You might regret this. Probably, but I appreciate you standing up there anyway. For the second witness, Cole swallowed his pride and went to see Martha Wickham. The Reverend's wife answered the door with flour on her apron and surprise on her face. Mr. Mercer, is everything all right? I need to ask you something, Mrs. Wickham, and I need you to hear me out before you say no. She folded her arms. I'm listening. I need a witness for the wedding, a woman, for Lin Yu's sake. I know you don't approve of this marriage, and I'm not asking you to. But she's alone here, and having someone stand with her would mean something. Martha's expression softened slightly. Have you asked her if she wants me there? No, but I think she'd appreciate having another woman present, even if that woman thinks she's making a mistake. I don't think she's making a mistake, Martha said quietly. I think you both are. But that's different from wishing you ill. She sighed. Yes, I'll stand with her, though I reserve the right to pray for both of you. Fair enough. Friday came too quickly, and not quickly enough. Cole spent the morning doing chores with unusual intensity, trying to burn off the nervous energy that had been building in his chest. Lin Yue stayed in the house, and he didn't see her until it was time to leave. When she emerged, Cole had to work to keep his face neutral. She'd done something to her hair, pulling it back in a style he'd never seen before, and the dress she'd altered looked better than he'd expected. She wasn't beautiful in the way Sarah had been. Sarah had been all soft curves and easy smiles, but there was something striking about Lin Yue, something that made you look twice. You ready? He asked. No, but we should go anyway. The ride into town was silent. Cole kept glancing at Lin Yue out of the corner of his eye, trying to read her expression, but her face was carefully blank. He wondered what she was thinking, whether she was scared, resigned, regretful, whether she wanted to tell him to turn the wagon around and forget the whole thing. But she didn't say anything, and neither did he. The church was small and drafty, with hard wooden pews and windows that let in more cold air than light. Reverend Wickham was already there, looking like a man preparing for a funeral. Tom arrived a few minutes later, cleaned up and wearing what was probably the only suit he owned. Martha came in last, carrying a small bunch of wildflowers she pressed into Lin Yu's hands without a word. Lin Yue looked down at the flowers, surprise flickering across her face. Thank you. Every bride should have flowers, Martha said simply. The ceremony itself was mercifully brief. Reverend Wickham read from his book in a voice that suggested he was fulfilling an obligation rather than celebrating a union. He asked the required questions. Do you take this woman? Do you take this man? For better or worse, richer or poorer, sickness and health. Cole answered yes and meant it, even if he wasn't entirely sure what he was agreeing to. Lin Yue answered yes in a voice that was steady and clear. Do you have a ring? The Reverend asked. Cole felt his stomach drop. He'd completely forgotten about rings. But before he could say anything, Tom stepped forward and pressed something into his palm. It was a simple band, slightly too large, clearly made in a hurry. Made it last night, Tom muttered. Figured you'd forget. Cole slipped it onto Lin Yu's finger. It was loose, spinning around when she moved her hand, but it was there. A physical marker of something that suddenly felt very real. By the power vested in me, Reverend Wickham said, sounding like each word cost him. I now pronounce you husband and wife. He didn't tell Cole to kiss the bride, which was probably for the best. They signed the papers. Tom and Martha signed as witnesses. And just like that, it was done. Lin Yue Wang was now Lin Yue Mercer, whether Red Hollow liked it or not. Outside, Tom shook Cole's hand. Good luck to you both. Thanks for the ring. Keep the receipt, Tom grinned, in case you need to return it. Martha hugged Lin Yu, which seemed to surprise both of them. "You're welcome at the church any time," she said, "for whatever that's worth." Then they were alone again, standing on the steps of the church as the sun started its descent. Mr. and Mrs. Cole Mercer. The words felt strange even thinking them. "Well," Cole said, "guess we should head home." Yes. The ride back was different from the ride there, though Cole couldn't quite put his finger on how. Something had shifted, some invisible line had been crossed, and they both felt it. They were married now, legally bound. Whatever happened next, they couldn't pretend this was temporary anymore. When they got back to the ranch, Cole unhitched the horses while Lin Yue went inside. By the time he finished and came in himself, she'd already changed out of her wedding dress and was standing at the stove starting dinner like it was any other night. Cole watched her for a moment from the doorway. His wife. The concept still didn't fit right in his mind. "Lin Yue," she turned. "I just want to make sure we're clear on something. What I said before about this being a marriage on paper, that still stands. Nothing has to change unless you want it to." She studied him with those dark eyes that always seemed to see more than he was comfortable with. "And what do you want?" It was a fair question, and Cole didn't have a good answer. "I want you to feel safe here, that's all." Lin Yu turned back to the stove. "Then I suppose we will continue as we were." Cole nodded, told himself he was relieved, and went to wash up for dinner. But things did change, in small ways that neither of them acknowledged out loud. Cole found himself more aware of her presence in the house, of the sounds she made, of her routines. Lin Yu started leaving her bedroom door slightly open instead of closed and locked. They lingered over meals a little longer, talking about inconsequential things. The weather, the ranch work, stories from their different childhoods that felt safe to share. It was like they were circling each other, trying to figure out what shape this new arrangement was supposed to take. A week after the wedding, Cole came home to find Lin Yue in the main room, holding a framed photograph. It was Sarah, young and smiling, frozen in a moment before everything went wrong. "I'm sorry," Lin Yue said quickly, setting it down. "I should not have touched." "It's fine." Cole picked up the photograph, looking at his first wife's face. "I should probably put these away. Must be strange for you, having her looking at you from every surface." "She was beautiful." "Yeah, she was." Lin Yue hesitated. "Do you mind if I ask what happened?" Cole sat down heavily on the couch. He'd told her the bare facts before, but not the full story. Maybe it was time. "She wanted a baby more than anything. We tried for years, and when it finally happened, she was so happy. I'd never seen her like that." His voice went rough. "But something went wrong during the birth. The baby was breech, and by the time we got the doctor out here, it was too late. Lost them both in the same night." "I am sorry." "Yeah, me too." Cole set the photograph down. "For a long time after, I couldn't be in this house. Everything reminded me of her. What she'd wanted, what we'd planned. I slept in the barn for months because I couldn't stand to look at the room where she died. But you came back. Had to eventually. Couldn't run a ranch from a barn forever." He looked at Lin Yue. "You're the first person who's lived here since then. The first person I've been able to, I don't know, tolerate, I guess." "That is a ringing endorsement." Cole actually laughed, which surprised both of them. "You know what I mean." "I think so." Lin Yu sat down on the other end of the couch, carefully maintaining distance. "In my village, there was a woman whose husband died young. Everyone expected her to mourn forever, to wear white and tend his grave and never smile again. But after a year, she started laughing, started living, and people were scandalized." She looked at Cole. "But I always thought she was the brave one, choosing to keep going instead of burying herself with him." "You think I should move on?" "I think you already have. You just have not admitted it yet." The words sat between them, heavy and uncomfortable. Cole wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, that he'd never move on from Sarah. But he couldn't quite make himself say it. Because maybe Lin Yue was right. Maybe he had already moved on, in small ways, without realizing it. And maybe that was okay. They sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that didn't demand to be filled. Outside, the sun finished setting and the nightbirds started their chorus. The house creaked and settled around them. "I should start dinner," Lin Yue said finally. "I'll help." It became their routine. Cooking together, moving around the kitchen in a careful dance that grew more natural each night. Cole would chop while Lin Yu seasoned, and they'd fall into easy conversation about nothing important. It was domestic in a way that should have felt wrong, but somehow didn't. 2 weeks after the wedding, Dutch Harrison rode out to the ranch again. This time he came alone, which was either a good sign or a very bad one. Cole met him in the yard, his posture deliberately casual, but his hand resting near the rifle propped against the porch railing. Dutch. Cole. Dutch dismounted, moving slowly like he was trying not to spook a nervous horse. I hear congratulations are in order. Word travels fast. It's a small town. Dutch took off his hat, turning it in his hands. Look, I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here because I feel like I owe you an apology. That was unexpected. For what? For the way I handled things before. Riding out here with those men, telling you what to do with your own life. That was wrong. He glanced toward the house where Lin Yue was visible through the window. Your wife? She seems like a decent person, and what you do on your own property is your business. Cole waited, sensing there was more. But, Dutch continued, I want to be straight with you. There are still people in town who aren't happy about this. Margaret Spencer especially. She's been stirring up trouble, saying things that aren't fit to repeat. Let her talk. It's more than talk now. She's organizing, getting other women on her side, spreading stories about your wife, about how she's corrupting the town's morals just by existing. Dutch put his hat back on. I'm not saying you should be scared, but you should be careful. Margaret's got influence, and she's not the type to let things go. I'll keep that in mind. One more thing. Dutch's expression turned serious. If you ever need help, real help, not just talk, you let me know. I might not understand your choices, but I respect your right to make them. And I don't like seeing a man get persecuted for doing what he thinks is right. He rode off before Cole could respond, leaving Cole standing in the yard wondering what the hell had just happened. Dutch Harrison, the closest thing Red Hollow had to aristocracy, offering his support. The world was getting stranger by the day. He went inside and found Lin Yue at the table, mending one of his shirts. She looked up when he entered. What did he want? To warn us, mostly. Apparently Margaret Spencer is on the warpath. Lin Yu's hand stilled on the fabric. Should I be worried? No, yes, I don't know. Cole sat down across from her. Dutch says she's spreading rumors, trying to turn the whole town against us. Against you, you mean? I am already against. Against both of us now. Cole reached across the table and touched her hand, the first deliberately intimate gesture he'd made since the wedding. You're my wife. That makes us a unit, whether Margaret likes it or not. Lin Yue looked down at his hand on hers, then back up at his face. You do not have to protect me like this. Yeah, I do. That's what marriage means, right? Looking out for each other. Is that all it means? The question hung in the air, loaded with implications neither of them was ready to address. Cole pulled his hand back. I should check on the horses. He left before she could respond, escaping into the familiar rhythms of work, because he didn't know how to handle whatever was happening between them. The confrontation came sooner than expected. 3 days later, Cole and Lin Yue went into town for supplies. They discussed whether it was wise, whether they should just avoid Red Hollow altogether, but Cole had decided they couldn't hide forever. They were married now, legal and official. The town would have to accept it. He was wrong. They were in the general store when Margaret Spencer walked in with an entourage of 4 other women, all dressed in their Sunday best despite it being a Wednesday. The store owner, who'd been grudgingly helping Cole gather supplies, suddenly found urgent business in the back room. Margaret approached slowly, deliberately, her heels clicking on the wooden floor like a countdown. The other women fanned out around her, creating a wall of silk and judgment. Well, Margaret said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, if it isn't Mr. and Mrs. Mercer, how domestic. Cole moved slightly, positioning himself between Margaret and Lin Yue. We're just here for supplies, Margaret. Of course you are. Though I have to wonder why your wife needs to come into town at all. Shouldn't she be keeping to the ranch where she belongs? Lin Yue stepped out from behind Cole. I go where I choose. Margaret's eyes narrowed. How bold. Tell me, do you even understand what you've done? Coming here, tricking a vulnerable man into marriage, disrupting an entire community? I tricked no one. Didn't you? Poor Cole, lonely and grieving, and you appear out of nowhere like some kind of... That's enough, Cole cut in, his voice hard. But Margaret wasn't done. She turned her attention fully on Lin Yue, and her expression shifted from condescending to cruel. Do you really think this makes you one of us? That a piece of paper changes what you are? You're still an outsider, still unwanted, still a stain on this town. One of the other women stepped forward. My husband says you practice witchcraft, that you use strange medicines and unnatural remedies. That is not true. My children have nightmares now, another woman interjected. Ever since you came to Red Hollow, nightmares about foreign devils. The accusations piled on top of each other, each more absurd than the last, but beneath the ridiculousness was real malice. These women wanted Lin Yue gone, and they didn't care how irrational they had to be to justify it. Cole felt his temper rising, the kind of anger that made his vision narrow and his hands shake. You don't know what you're talking about. Margaret smiled, sensing blood in the water. Don't we? We know she's living in your house. We know you married her, and we know that's wrong. She turned to address the other customers in the store who'd been pretending not to listen. This town was built by decent people with decent values. We can't let it be destroyed by someone who doesn't belong here. She's my wife, Cole said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. That means she belongs here just as much as any of you. A wife in name only, I'm sure. You couldn't possibly. You sure you want to finish that sentence? The store had gone completely silent. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Margaret's face flushed with anger and embarrassment, but she'd backed herself into a corner and couldn't retreat without losing face. You've made your choice, she said coldly, and now you'll live with the consequences, both of you. She swept out of the store with her followers trailing behind, leaving chaos in her wake. The other customers stared at Cole and Lin Yue with a mixture of pity and disgust. The store owner emerged from the back room looking deeply uncomfortable. I think you'd better leave, he said quietly. We haven't finished. Now, Cole, please. They left without the supplies they'd come for. Outside, Lin Yue was shaking, though whether from anger or fear, Cole couldn't tell. He took her arm and guided her to the wagon. I am sorry, she said once they were moving. I made things worse. No, you didn't do anything wrong. They're just... Cole struggled for words. They're scared of change, of things they don't understand, so they lash out. At me. At both of us now. Lin Yue was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I think we should leave, sell the ranch, go somewhere else. Somewhere where people do not know us. Cole had thought about it. Of course he had. Packing up, starting over, leaving Red Hollow and all its poison behind. But the idea of being driven out, of letting Margaret and her cronies win, stuck in his throat like a bone. No. Cole, no. He looked at her directly. This is my home. I built this ranch with my own hands. I'm not giving it up because some bitter woman decided she doesn't like who I married. It is not worth it. It's worth it to me. They rode the rest of the way in tense silence. When they got back to the ranch, Lin Yue went straight to her room and closed the door. Cole stood in the main room, his fists clenched, wondering if he'd just made a terrible mistake, wondering if his pride was going to cost them both more than he could afford to pay. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house creak and settle around him. At some point, he heard Lin Yue's door open, heard her footsteps padding softly to the kitchen, the sound of water being poured. He got up and found her sitting at the table in the dark, holding a cup of tea between her hands like it was the only warm thing in the world. Can't sleep either? He asked. She shook her head. Cole sat down across from her. I meant what I said. I'm not leaving. I know. But if you want to go, if this is too much, I'll understand. Lin Yue looked at him with tired eyes. Where would I go, Cole? I have nothing, no family, no money, no place that wants me. This ranch is all I have. Her voice cracked slightly. You are all I have. The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Cole felt something shift in his chest, some wall he'd been carefully maintaining starting to crumble. You have me, he said quietly, for whatever that's worth. It is worth more than you think. They sat together in the darkness, drinking tea and not talking, and somehow it felt like the most honest conversation they'd ever had. When Lin Yue finally went back to bed, Cole stayed at the table a while longer, thinking about choices and consequences and the strange woman who'd become his wife. Things couldn't continue like this. Something had to change. He just wasn't sure what, or how, or whether he was ready for it. But ready or not, change was coming. And when it arrived, it would force both of them to decide what this marriage really was, and what they wanted it to become. The change started small, the way most important things do. It was a Wednesday morning, 3 weeks after the incident at the general store, when Cole woke up to find Lin Yue already in the barn, trying to saddle one of the horses. She was doing it wrong. The cinch was too loose and the stirrups were uneven, but she was trying, and that counted for something. "What are you doing?" She jumped, nearly dropping the saddle. "I need to learn. I cannot stay trapped on this ranch forever." Cole leaned against the barn door, arms crossed. "You planning on going somewhere?" "No, but I should know how to ride in case—" She stopped, not finishing the thought. In case she needed to run, in case everything fell apart and she had to leave in a hurry. Cole pushed off the doorframe and walked over. "Here, let me show you." He adjusted the saddle, explaining each step as he went. His hands brushed against hers a few times, and each time Lin Yue pulled back like she'd been burned. Cole pretended not to notice, focusing on the buckles and straps like they were the most important thing in the world. "The horse's name is Copper," he said. "She's old and slow, which makes her perfect for learning. Won't bolt on you or try anything stupid." Lin Yue ran her hand along Copper's neck, and the horse nickered softly. "She is gentle." "Most things are, if you treat them right." Cole stepped back. "Okay. Put your foot in the stirrup, your left foot, and swing your other leg over." It took 3 tries before Lin Yue managed to get herself into the saddle without nearly falling off the other side. Once she was up, she sat frozen, gripping the saddle horn with white knuckles. "I am very high up." Cole bit back a smile. "You'll get used to it. Here, take the reins like this." He positioned her hands correctly. "Light touch. You're not trying to strangle the leather." They spent the next hour in the corral, with Cole walking beside Copper as Lin Yue learned the basics. How to turn, how to stop, how to keep her balance when the horse moved. She fell off twice, once when Copper stopped suddenly to investigate something on the ground, and once when Lin Yue leaned too far to one side, but she got back on each time without complaint. By the time they finished, Lin Yue was covered in dust and her legs were shaking from gripping the horse too tight, but there was color in her cheeks and something like pride in her eyes. "Same time tomorrow?" Cole asked. Yes. It became their new routine. Every morning before the real work started, Lin Yue would practice riding while Cole gave instructions and tried not to worry too much when she attempted things that were slightly beyond her skill level. She was a quick learner, stubborn, and determined, and within 2 weeks she could ride well enough to be useful, which was good because Cole needed the help. One of the fences on the far pasture had come down in a storm, and cattle had scattered across land that didn't belong to him. It was a 2-person job at minimum, and Cole had been dreading doing it alone. But now he had Lin Yue, and despite everything, she was turning into a decent ranch hand. They rode out early one morning, the sun just starting to burn off the night's chill. Lin Yue sat on Copper with more confidence now, her posture relaxed, her hands steady on the reins. She'd taken to wearing men's trousers for riding, Cole's old ones, altered to fit, and the practical clothing suited her better than any dress. "How many cattle got out?" she asked. "Maybe a dozen. Hard to say until we count them." Cole guided his horse around a boulder. "We'll round them up, fix the fence, and hope nothing else breaks this week." "Is it always like this? Things breaking and needing repair?" "Pretty much. Ranch work is 90% fixing things that broke and 10% trying to prevent things from breaking." He glanced at her. "You getting tired of it?" "No, I like it." "Even the parts where you fall off horses and get stepped on by cows? Especially those parts." Lin Yue smiled, and Cole realized he didn't see her smile often enough. "In China, I was expected to stay inside, keep quiet, make myself small. Here, I can be useful. That matters." They found the cattle scattered across a rocky slope, grazing like they hadn't just caused a massive headache. Cole and Lin Yue split up, circling around to herd them back toward the broken fence. It was slow work, and the cattle were stubborn, but eventually they got them moving in the right direction. They were almost done when one of the cows, a cantankerous old beast Cole had never liked, decided to make a break for it. It charged past Lin Yu, spooking Copper, and suddenly Lin Yu was fighting to stay in the saddle as her horse reared. Cole's heart stopped. He kicked his own horse forward, shouting instructions that Lin Yu probably couldn't hear over the panic. But somehow, through luck or skill or sheer determination, she managed to stay on. She got Copper under control, calmed her down, and then turned to give Cole a look that was equal parts terrified and triumphant. "I did not fall." "No, you didn't." Cole rode up beside her, and without thinking about it, he reached out and squeezed her shoulder. "You did good." The touch lasted maybe 2 seconds before he pulled away, but Lin Yu's expression shifted into something softer, something that made Cole's chest feel tight. They finished the roundup in silence, fixed the fence well enough to hold until Cole could do a proper repair, and headed back to the ranch. It was mid-afternoon by the time they got home, both of them tired and filthy and oddly content. That night, Lin Yu made dinner while Cole cleaned up. When he came back into the main room, she'd set the table differently than usual, candles lit, the good plates out, food arranged with care instead of just slopped onto dishes. "What's the occasion?" Cole asked. "No occasion. I just thought—" She trailed off, suddenly looking uncertain. "Is this too much?" "No, it's nice." Cole sat down, and the candlelight caught her face in a way that made her look different, softer. Or maybe he was just seeing her differently. "You didn't have to go to the trouble." "I wanted to." They ate, and the conversation came easier than it used to. Lin Yu told him about her village in China, about the mountains and the rice paddies, and the festivals she'd loved as a child. Cole told her about growing up on his father's ranch, about learning to ride before he could read, about the first time he'd tried to break a wild horse and ended up with a broken arm for his trouble. It felt like the kind of conversation married people were supposed to have, getting to know each other, building something beyond just survival. After dinner, Lin Yu started clearing the dishes, but Cole waved her off. "I'll get them. You cooked. We can do them together." So they did, standing side by side at the wash basin, their hands occasionally bumping in the soapy water. It was domestic and mundane, and somehow more intimate than anything that had come before. Cole found himself hyper-aware of her presence, the way she hummed softly while she worked, the smell of the herbs she used in her hair, the small scar on her wrist that he'd never noticed before. When they finished, Lin Yu didn't immediately retreat to her room like she usually did. Instead, she sat on the couch, and after a moment's hesitation, Cole sat beside her, not touching, but closer than they'd been before. "Can I ask you something?" Lin Yu said. "When you married me, was it really just to protect me? Or was there another reason?" Cole considered lying. It would be easier. But something about the way she was looking at him, the quiet hope in her eyes, made him choose honesty instead. At first, yeah, it was about protection, about doing the right thing. He stared at his hands. But somewhere along the way, it became something else. "I started looking forward to coming home, started caring what you thought, started—" He stopped, struggling with words that didn't come naturally. "I don't know, feeling less alone, I guess." "I feel that too." The admission hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility. Cole turned to look at her, really look at her, and saw his own uncertainty reflected back. They were both scared, both unsure of what this was becoming, but they were in it together, and that had to count for something. Lin Yu, whatever he was about to say was cut off by the sound of hoofbeats outside. Multiple horses, coming fast. Cole was on his feet instantly, his hand going to the rifle above the fireplace. Lin Yu stood too, her face pale. "Stay inside," Cole said. He stepped out onto the porch, rifle in hand, and counted 6 riders. They stopped in the yard, their horses stamping and blowing. In the twilight, Cole couldn't make out faces, but he recognized the lead rider by his posture. Dutch Harrison. "Evening, Cole." "Dutch." Cole kept the rifle pointed at the ground, but his grip was ready. "This is a lot of company for a social call." "It's not a social call." Dutch dismounted, and the other men followed suit. "We need to talk, you and your wife both." "About what?" "About the fact that your wife just might have saved my daughter's life." That was not what Cole had been expecting. "What?" Dutch's expression was hard to read in the fading light. "Can we come in? This is going to take some explaining." Cole hesitated, every instinct screaming caution, but he stepped aside. All right, but the rest of you stay on the porch. Dutch entered the house alone. Lin Yue was standing in the middle of the room, her hands clasped in front of her, her face carefully blank. Dutch removed his hat and nodded to her. Mrs. Mercer. Mr. Harrison. My daughter Emma, she's 8 years old, sweet kid, smart as a whip. 3 days ago she got sick. Fever, chills, couldn't keep anything down. Dutch's voice was tight. Doc Pritchard said it was influenza, gave her some medicine, told us to keep her comfortable, but she kept getting worse. This morning she stopped responding. Doc said there was nothing more he could do, that we should prepare ourselves. Cole felt his stomach sink. Dutch, I'm sorry, but... Let me finish. Dutch looked at Lin Yue. My wife was beside herself, desperate, and she remembered something Margaret Spencer had said about you using strange medicines. Witchcraft, Margaret called it. But my wife didn't care about that. She just wanted to save our daughter, so she came here. Lin Yu's eyes widened. Mrs. Harrison was here? This afternoon, while you two were out with the cattle, she waited for hours. When you finally came back, she begged you to help. And you did. Cole looked at Lin Yue. You didn't tell me. She asked me not to. She said her husband would be angry if he knew she had come. Lin Yue turned to Dutch. I gave her herbs, for fever and for nausea. Basic remedies my mother taught me, nothing magical. I don't care if it was magic or medicine or plain dumb luck, Dutch said, and his voice cracked slightly. Emma's fever broke 2 hours ago. She's going to be fine. The doctor can't explain it, but I know. You saved her. The room went very quiet. I'm glad she is better, Lin Yue said carefully, but I did very little. The medicine your doctor gave her probably... No. Dutch's voice was firm. I know what you did. And so does my wife, and now I'm here to... He stopped, struggling with something. To say thank you, and to apologize for the way I treated you before, for the things I said. You're a good person, and I was wrong. Lin Yue looked like she didn't know what to do with this information. Cole stepped forward. We appreciate you saying that, Dutch. There's more. Dutch put his hat back on. Word's going to spread about this, about what she did for Emma, and when it does, it's going to change things in town. Not with everyone. Margaret and her crowd are probably still going to hate you, but with enough people that it'll matter. He looked at Cole. You've got friends now, whether you know it or not. People who are grateful, and if you need anything, you let me know. After Dutch and his men left, Cole and Lin Yue stood in the main room, neither of them quite able to process what had just happened. Finally, Cole broke the silence. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was not sure it would work, and I did not want you to worry. Lin Yue sat down heavily on the couch. Mrs. Harrison was so frightened, I could not turn her away. Even though helping her was a risk? What risk? If the child died, they would blame me anyway. If she lived, maybe... She trailed off. I do not know what I thought would happen. Cole sat beside her. You did a good thing. I hope so. The next few days proved Dutch right. News of Emma Harrison's recovery spread through Red Hollow like wildfire, and with it came a shift in how people treated Lin Yue. Not everyone, Margaret Spencer and her followers still crossed the street to avoid her, but enough. Enough that when Cole and Lin Yue went into town for supplies the following week, the general store owner actually greeted them by name. Enough that 2 different women stopped Lin Yue on the street to ask about remedies for various ailments. Enough that the Reverend's wife invited them to Sunday dinner. It wasn't acceptance, not exactly, but it was the beginning of something. Cole watched it happen with a mixture of relief and pride. Relief because Lin Yue deserved kindness after so much cruelty. Pride because she'd earned this through her own actions, not because she was his wife or because anyone felt sorry for her. But the shift in the town's attitude brought its own complications. Margaret Spencer didn't take the change well. She'd built her social position on being the moral authority of Red Hollow, and having Lin Yue, a Chinese immigrant, a foreign interloper, gain respect threatened that position. So she did what people like Margaret always did when they felt threatened. She lashed out. It happened at the church social, a monthly gathering that Cole and Lin Yue had avoided until now. But Martha Wickham had insisted they attend, and Lin Yue had decided it was time to stop hiding. So they went, dressed in their best clothes, prepared for awkwardness but hoping for civility. They got neither. The social was held in the church hall, a large room with long tables and decorations that someone had put way too much effort into. When Cole and Lin Yu entered, conversation didn't exactly stop, but it definitely stuttered. People glanced at them, then away, then back again, like they couldn't quite decide how to react. Martha bustled over, all forced cheer and determination. "So glad you could make it. Lin Yue, you must try the apple pie. It's Clara's recipe, and it's wonderful." She guided them to the refreshment table, keeping up a steady stream of chatter that was probably meant to be comforting but mostly just emphasized how uncomfortable everyone else was. Cole got them both coffee, and they found a relatively quiet corner to stand in, watching the social dynamics play out around them. Dutch and his wife were there, and when they saw Lin Yue, Mrs. Harrison came over immediately. She was a small woman with kind eyes and graying hair, and she looked at Lin Yue like she was something precious. "Mrs. Mercer, I never got to thank you properly." "There is no need." "There's every need." Mrs. Harrison took Lin Yu's hands in hers. "You saved my daughter's life. If there's ever anything I can do for you, anything at all, you only have to ask." Other people were watching this exchange, and Cole could see the calculation in their eyes. Mrs. Harrison was Dutch's wife, and Dutch was important. If she was showing Lin Yu respect, that meant something. But not to everyone. Margaret Spencer appeared like a storm cloud, her face tight with anger, barely held in check. She'd brought her usual entourage, 4 women who seemed to exist solely to agree with whatever Margaret said, and together they formed a wall of hostility. "How touching," Margaret said, her voice dripping acid. "The grateful mother and the foreign savior. Very dramatic." Mrs. Harrison stiffened. "Margaret, this is neither the time nor the place. On the contrary, this is exactly the place. We're all here as a community, and we need to address the elephant in the room." Margaret turned her attention to Lin Yue. Or should I say, the outsider in the room. Cole moved forward, but Lin Yue put a hand on his arm. "Let her speak." "Oh, how gracious of you." Margaret's smile was vicious. "Tell me, Mrs. Mercer, what exactly did you give Emma Harrison? What kind of foreign concoction did you use on that poor child?" "Herbs for fever and stomach pain." "Herbs." Margaret said it like a curse. "And where did you learn about these herbs? From some witch doctor in China? From ancient pagan rituals?" "From my mother, who was a healer." "A healer?" Margaret laughed, and it was an ugly sound. "That's a nice word for it, but we all know what you really are. You're a fraud who got lucky. That little girl would have recovered on her own, and now everyone's treating you like some kind of miracle worker when really you're just—" "Enough!" The voice cut through the room like a whip, and everyone turned to see who'd spoken. It was Cole, and he was done. He stepped forward, putting himself between Margaret and Lin Yu, and when he spoke, his voice was low and controlled, but absolutely furious. "You've been running your mouth about my wife since the day she arrived in this town, calling her names, spreading lies, trying to run her off. And I've kept quiet because I figured you'd get tired of it eventually. But you haven't. You've just gotten meaner." Margaret's face flushed. "I'm simply stating the truth." "No, you're scared. You're scared because a woman you decided was beneath you is turning out to be better than you in every way that matters. She's kinder, she's braver, and when people needed help, she gave it, while you were too busy judging everyone to actually do anything useful." The room had gone completely silent. People were staring at Cole like they'd never seen him before. Maybe they hadn't. He'd always been quiet, keeping to himself, avoiding confrontation. But this was different. This was his wife they were attacking, and he was done letting it happen. "Lin Yu is my wife," he continued, his voice ringing through the hall. "Not a wife of convenience, not a wife in name only. My actual wife, who I married because I wanted to, because she's decent and hardworking and deserves better than the way this town has treated her." He looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as he could. "And if anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with me directly instead of hiding behind gossip and cruelty." Margaret was shaking with rage. "How dare you?" "I dare because it's the truth. Now, if you'll excuse us, my wife and I are going to get some of that apple pie Martha mentioned." He took Lin Yu's arm and guided her toward the refreshment table, leaving Margaret sputtering in their wake. The room erupted in whispered conversations, but Cole didn't care. He'd said what needed to be said. They got their pie and stood in the corner, not talking, just existing in the aftermath of what had just happened. Lin Yu's hand was trembling slightly when she raised the fork to her mouth. "You did not have to do that," she said quietly. "Yeah, I did. They will hate you now." "They already didn't like me much. Besides," Cole set down his plate and looked at her directly. "I meant what I said, every word. You deserve better than this." Lin Yu's eyes were shining with something that might have been tears. "Thank you. Don't thank me for telling the truth." The social broke up early, the atmosphere too tense to sustain the pretense of community fellowship. Cole and Lin Yu were among the first to leave, and the ride home was quiet, both of them processing what had happened. When they got back to the ranch, Lin Yu dismounted and stood looking up at the stars, which were bright and clear in the desert sky. Cole came to stand beside her. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Marrying me. Standing up for me tonight. All of it." Cole thought about the question seriously, turning it over in his mind. Did he regret it? His life had been simpler before Lin Yue arrived. Quieter. Lonelier, too, but he'd gotten used to that. Now everything was complicated. His relationship with the town, his own feelings, the future he'd thought was settled. But regret? No. "No," he said. "I don't regret it. Even though it has cost you. It hasn't cost me anything I wasn't willing to pay." He turned to face her. "Lin Yue, when you first came here, I told you this marriage was for protection, just a practical arrangement, but that's not true anymore, is it?" She looked at him, and in the starlight her face was beautiful and uncertain. "No, it is not true anymore." "So what is it?" The question hung between them, enormous and terrifying. Lin Yu took a breath like she was gathering courage for something dangerous. "It is real," she said quietly. "For me, at least. I do not know when it happened, but somewhere between riding lessons and fixing fences and sitting together in the dark, it became real. You became—" She stopped, struggling with words. "Important. You became important to me." Cole felt something crack open in his chest, some carefully maintained wall crumbling into dust. He'd been telling himself this was still just an arrangement, still just survival, because admitting anything else felt like betraying Sarah. But standing here under the stars with this woman who'd become his wife, in every sense that mattered, he couldn't lie to himself anymore. "You're important to me too," he said, and his voice came out rough. "I didn't plan on that. Didn't want it, to be honest. But it happened anyway." "What do we do now?" It was a fair question. They'd acknowledged something that couldn't be unacknowledged, crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The marriage that had started as protection had turned into something else, something neither of them had been looking for, but both of them had found anyway. Cole reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, and took her hand. Her fingers were small and calloused from work, and they fit against his like they'd been designed for it. "We figure it out," he said, "together." Lin Yue smiled, and it was the kind of smile that transformed her entire face. Together. They stood there for a while longer, hands linked, not talking because words felt insufficient. Then, by unspoken agreement, they went inside. But instead of separating to their different rooms like they had every other night, Cole stopped in the main room and turned to Lin Yue. "Would you want to, I don't know, sit for a while? Talk?" "Yes, I would like that." So they sat on the couch, closer than they'd been before, and talked until late into the night, about everything and nothing, about fears and hopes and the strange path that had brought them to this moment. And when Lin Yue's head drooped with exhaustion and came to rest on Cole's shoulder, he didn't move. He just sat there, feeling the warmth of her against him, and thought that maybe, just maybe, he could allow himself to be happy again. Eventually they both fell asleep there on the couch, tangled together in a way that would have been scandalous to the town that already thought the worst of them. But here, in their house, on their ranch, it felt right. Cole woke first as dawn light crept through the windows. Lin Yue was curled against him, her hair falling across her face, her breathing soft and steady. He watched her sleep for a moment, marveling at how quickly his life had changed, how this woman he'd married out of obligation had become the center of everything. He shifted slightly, trying not to wake her, but her eyes opened anyway. For a moment she looked confused, Then her expression cleared and she smiled. "Good morning?" "Morning." Cole's voice was scratchy from sleep. I need to get started on chores." But he didn't move, and neither did she. They stayed there, looking at each other in the early light, both aware that something fundamental had shifted between them. "Cole," Lin Yue said softly, "last night, what you said at the social, did you mean it?" "Every word. That I am your actual wife." "Yes." She took a breath. "Then maybe it is time we stopped pretending otherwise." Cole's heart kicked against his ribs. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I am tired of separate rooms and careful distance. I am saying that if this is real, if we are real, then maybe we should stop being afraid of it." Her eyes searched his face. "Unless you do not want," he kissed her. It was clumsy and unexpected, and probably not the smooth romantic gesture either of them had imagined for their first kiss, but it was honest. And when Lin Yue kissed him back, her hands coming up to grip his shirt, Cole felt like something that had been broken inside him was finally starting to heal. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Lin Yue was smiling again. "Was that your answer?" "Yeah, that was my answer." They sat there in the growing light, foreheads pressed together, and Cole realized that this was what he'd been missing since Sarah died. Not just companionship or comfort, but connection. The feeling of being truly known by another person and choosing them anyway. "We should probably talk about this," he said. "About what it means. What changes." "Must we talk right now?" "No, I guess not." She kissed him again, and this time it was slower, deeper, full of all the things they'd been holding back for months. And when they finally pulled apart, both of them flushed and slightly breathless. The sun was fully up, and the day was waiting. Cole stood and offered his hand to help Lin Yue up. She took it, and they stood facing each other in the morning light, the weight of the night's confession settling around them like a comfortable blanket. "The cattle aren't going to feed themselves," Cole said. "No, they're not. But maybe tonight we could have dinner, a real one, and talk about all this." "I would like that very much." Cole headed out to start the day's work, but everything felt different now. Lighter. Like he'd been carrying a weight he hadn't even realized was there, and someone had finally helped him set it down. He found himself whistling as he worked, something he hadn't done in years, and when he caught himself doing it, he didn't stop. Inside the house, Lin Yue was moving through her morning routine in a daze, touching her lips occasionally like she couldn't quite believe what had happened. She'd come to America expecting nothing and had found a hostile town, a marriage of convenience, and a life of hard work. But somehow, impossibly, she'd also found this. A man who saw her not as a burden or an obligation, but as someone worth defending, worth loving. The word scared her. Love. She wasn't sure if that's what this was yet, but it was something real and growing, and that was enough for now. The day passed in a blur of normal tasks made extraordinary by anticipation. When evening came and they sat down to dinner, there was a new awareness between them. A recognition that they'd crossed into new territory and there was no going back. "So," Cole said, passing her the bread, "we should probably figure out some things." "Like what? Like whether you want to move into my room, or if I should move into yours, or if we want to pick one of them and make it ours." Lin Yue considered this. "Your room is bigger. Then we'll use mine. I can clear out some drawer space for your things." They talked through the practicalities, and beneath the mundane discussion of closet space and which side of the bed, there was an undercurrent of nervous excitement. They were really doing this, turning their paper marriage into something real. That night, when the dishes were cleared and the lamps turned low, they stood in the doorway of what was now their bedroom, both suddenly uncertain. Cole had been married before, but that had been different. Sarah had been his childhood sweetheart, and everything between them had been easy and natural. This was complicated, layered with months of careful distance and the knowledge that they'd both been hurt before. "We don't have to," Cole started. "I want to," Lin Yue said firmly. "I am nervous, but I want to." "Me too, both parts." They laughed, and the laughter broke some of the tension. They moved together slowly, figuring out the geometry of two people learning to share space, and if it wasn't perfect or smooth, it was real. And real was better than anything either of them had dared hope for. Later, Lying in the dark with Lin Yu's head on his chest and her breathing evening out into sleep, Cole stared at the ceiling and felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Content. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of something good enough to balance it out. He'd married Lin Yue to protect her, but somewhere along the way she'd done the same for him. Protected him from loneliness, from bitterness, from the slow death of living without purpose. She'd given him a reason to care about the future instead of just surviving it. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head, and she stirred slightly, her arm tightening around him. "Cole?" she murmured, half asleep. "Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for letting me." She fell back asleep. But Cole stayed awake a while longer, listening to the sounds of the house settling and the wind outside and the quiet breathing of the woman who'd become his wife in every way that mattered. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The town wouldn't suddenly forget its prejudices, and Margaret Spencer certainly wasn't going to accept defeat gracefully. But they'd face it together now, and that made all the difference. In the morning, they'd wake up as husband and wife, not just legally, but truly. And whatever came next, they'd be ready for it. The first morning Cole woke with Lin Yue in his arms, truly in his arms as his wife. He experienced something close to panic. Not because he regretted it. The opposite, actually. He'd let himself feel something real for the first time since Sarah died, and the vulnerability of it terrified him. What if he lost this too? What if caring this much just meant setting himself up for another kind of devastation? Lin Yu must have sensed the tension in his body because she stirred and looked up at him with sleepy, concerned eyes. "What is wrong?" "Nothing. Everything's fine." She propped herself up on one elbow, studying his face with that directness she had. "You are a terrible liar." Cole sighed. I'm not used to this. Being happy. Feels dangerous." "Dangerous how?" "Like something's going to come along and wreck it." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with his inability to articulate the knot of fear in his chest. "Every time I've had something good, it got taken away. My parents when I was young, Sarah and the baby, and now there's you, and I—" Lin Yu put her hand on his chest, right over his heart. "I am not going anywhere." "You can't promise that." "No. But I can promise that I will not leave by choice. Whatever else happens, we face together." She held his gaze. "You said that last night, together. Did you mean it?" "Yeah, I meant it." "Then stop waiting for disaster and just be here. With me. Now." It was such simple advice and so hard to follow, but Cole tried. He pulled her close and pressed his face into her hair and tried to just exist in the moment instead of catastrophizing about the future. They lay there for a while longer, neither of them particularly eager to start the day, but eventually the demands of the ranch pulled them from bed. They moved around each other in the bedroom with a new kind of awareness, learning the rhythms of shared space. Lin Yu got dressed, while Cole pretended not to watch, and when she caught him looking, she threw a pillow at his head. "Stop staring." "Can't help it. You're in my room now. I'm going to stare." She rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. Breakfast was different too. The easy silence they'd developed over months had shifted into something more charged, more intimate. Their knees bumped under the table and neither of them moved away. When Cole reached for the coffee pot at the same time as Lin Yue, their hands tangled together and stayed that way longer than necessary. "We are being ridiculous," Lin Yu said, "completely ridiculous." But neither of them stopped. The work of the ranch pulled them apart eventually. Cole had to ride out to check on the herd in the north pasture, and Lin Yu had a long list of tasks that included fixing a broken gate and dealing with a persistent leak in the barn roof. They separated with a kiss that was still new enough to feel momentous, and Cole rode off trying not to grin like an idiot. He was maybe a mile from the house when he saw the dust cloud on the horizon. Riders, moving fast, heading toward his ranch. Cole's good mood evaporated instantly, replaced by the cold calculation of potential threat. He turned his horse and pushed her into a gallop, racing back the way he'd come. By the time he reached the ranch, 3 riders were already in the yard. Lin Yu was standing on the porch with her arms crossed, her posture defensive, and Cole recognized 2 of the 3 men immediately. One was Samuel Pike, who owned the land neighboring Cole's to the east. The other was his son, James, a kid maybe 19 who'd inherited his father's mean streak and none of his sense. The third man Cole didn't know. He dismounted before his horse had fully stopped and strode over. What's this about? Samuel Pike turned and his expression was hard. This about your fence line, Mercer. It's moved. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fence that marks the property line between your land and mine. Someone's moved it. About 20 feet into my property, which means you're grazing your cattle on land that doesn't belong to you. Cole's jaw tightened. I haven't touched that fence.
Well, somebody did. And seeing as how it benefits you, I figure that somebody was you. You figure wrong. James Pike stepped forward, all young swagger and poorly contained aggression. My pa's not a liar. That fence got moved and we want it put back. Today. Cole ignored the kid and kept his attention on Samuel. When's the last time you actually checked that fence line? Month ago, maybe. Looked fine then.
And now it doesn't. So maybe instead of riding over here making accusations, you should consider that there might be another explanation. Like what? Like the storm 2 weeks back that took down half my fencing in the south pasture. Could have shifted things around. Could have been an honest mistake when I was fixing things. It was a reasonable explanation, and from the slight shift in Samuel's expression, he knew it. But the third man, the one Cole didn't recognize, spoke up before Samuel could respond. Or it could be theft. The stranger's voice was smooth, educated, and carried an authority that immediately set Cole's teeth on edge. Wouldn't be the first time someone tried to expand their property by moving boundary markers. And you are? Cole asked. Marcus Wheaton. I represent Mr. Pike's interests. He's a lawyer, James Pike added. Like this explained everything. Cole looked at Samuel. You brought a lawyer to a fence dispute? Samuel had the decency to look uncomfortable. Margaret Spencer suggested I consult with someone who knew the law. Wheaton here happened to be passing through, so... Of course Margaret was involved. Cole should have known. Look, Cole said, keeping his voice level. I'll ride out with you right now, and we'll look at the fence together. If it got moved, we'll figure out why and fix it. But I didn't steal your land, Samuel. We've been neighbors for 10 years. You know me better than that. Before Samuel could respond, Lin Yu spoke from the porch. There is another possibility. All eyes turned to her. She descended the steps slowly, her expression thoughtful. What if someone moved the fence deliberately? Not Mr. Mercer, but someone else. Someone who wanted to create conflict between neighbors. Marcus Wheaton actually laughed. That's quite a conspiracy theory, Mrs. Mercer, though I suppose one might expect creative explanations from someone in your position. The casual racism in his tone made Cole's hands ball into fists. Watch yourself. I'm simply observing that your wife might have a vested interest in deflecting blame. After all, if you're embroiled in legal disputes with your neighbors, you might be distracted from other matters. Wheaton's smile was oily. Such as the question of whether your marriage is even legal, given that your wife is Chinese and may not have been properly naturalized. The air went cold. Cole took a step toward Wheaton, but Lin Yu's voice stopped him. I am a legal resident, and our marriage was performed by a minister and recorded with the county. Was it? How fascinating. I wonder if a review of those documents might reveal irregularities. Wheaton pulled out a pocket watch and checked it casually. But that's a matter for another day. Right now, we're here about the fence. So, Mr. Mercer, will you accompany us to inspect the boundary, or shall we proceed with filing a formal complaint? Cole wanted to refuse, wanted to throw these men off his property and tell them to go to hell. But that would just escalate things, and escalation was exactly what Margaret and her lawyer wanted. Fine. Let's go look at the damn fence. He glanced at Lin Yue, trying to convey reassurance he didn't entirely feel. She gave him a small nod, and he mounted up with the other men. The ride to the disputed fence line was tense and silent. When they reached it, Cole dismounted and walked the length of the fence, examining the posts and wire. Samuel was right. The fence had been moved. But looking at the way the posts were set, the fresh dirt around the bases, Cole could tell this hadn't been done recently. This was deliberate work, done carefully to look like it had been there all along. This wasn't me, Cole said. So you say. Marcus Wheaton was making notes in a small leather book. But you'll understand that from Mr. Pike's perspective, the evidence suggests otherwise. The evidence suggests someone went to a lot of trouble to make it look like I stole land. Cole turned to Samuel. Think about it. Why would I move a fence so obviously that you'd notice? If I wanted to steal 20 feet of your property, I'd do it gradually, over time, where you wouldn't catch on. Samuel frowned, clearly thinking this through. But before he could respond, James spoke up. Maybe you got sloppy. Or maybe you figured my pa wouldn't notice since he doesn't check the fence line regular. Or maybe, Cole said, his patience wearing thin, someone wants to cause trouble between us. Someone who'd benefit from neighbors fighting instead of helping each other. You keep hinting at some grand conspiracy, Wheaton said, but you can't actually name anyone, can you? Because you know such accusations without proof would be slander. Cole bit back the response he wanted to give. Wheaton was right. He had no proof that Margaret was behind this. Just suspicion and the knowledge that she'd do anything to make Lin Yu's life hell, even if it meant destroying Cole in the process. I'll move the fence back, Cole said finally. Today, and I'll mark the actual property line so there's no confusion. Samuel nodded slowly. That seems fair? Fair? James looked at his father incredulously. He stole our land and you're just going to let him move a fence and call it even? I said it seems fair. Samuel's voice had an edge to it that suggested his son should shut up. Cole's willing to fix it, and that's good enough for me. Marcus Wheaton closed his notebook with a snap. Well, if you're satisfied, Mr. Pike, then I suppose the matter is resolved, for now. He looked at Cole. But I'll be staying in Red Hollow for a while, and I'll be keeping an eye on situations that might require legal intervention. The threat was clear. Cole met the lawyer's eyes and didn't look away. You do that. After the men left, Cole spent the rest of the day moving the fence back to where it belonged and setting new markers at the actual property line. It was hard, frustrating work, made worse by the knowledge that someone had set him up. By the time he rode back to the ranch, the sun was setting and his mood was black. Lin Yu met him at the barn. One look at his face and she didn't ask how it went. She just helped him unsaddle the horse and then led him inside where she'd kept dinner warm. They ate in silence for a while. Finally, Cole spoke. This is going to get worse before it gets better. I know. That lawyer, Wheaton, he's not going to let this go. And the thing he said about our marriage, about you being naturalized. Cole set down his fork. Can they actually do that? Challenge whether our marriage is legal? Lin Yu's expression was carefully controlled. I do not know. The laws about who can marry, who can own property, who can become a citizen, they are complicated, and they change depending on who is interpreting them. So he could make trouble. Yes, he could make trouble. Cole pushed back from the table and started pacing. This is Margaret's doing, all of it. The fence, the lawyer, the threats. She's escalating because nothing else has worked. What do you want to do? I want to... Cole stopped himself. What he wanted to do involved a lot of violence and would likely land him in jail. I don't know. But I'm not going to let her destroy what we've built. Lin Yue stood and crossed to him, taking his hands in hers. Then we need to be smarter than her, more patient. She wants you to lose your temper, to do something reckless. Do not give her that. So we just take it, let her throw everything she has at us and hope we're still standing when she's done? No. We defend ourselves, but carefully, strategically. Lin Yu's grip tightened. I have survived worse than Margaret Spencer. So have you. We will survive this too. Cole pulled her into a hug, and they stood there in the middle of the kitchen, holding each other against the storm they both knew was coming. The next few weeks proved Lin Yu right. Margaret's campaign against them intensified. Small businesses in town that had started warming to Lin Yu suddenly refused her service again. Rumors spread that Cole was abusing his wife, that Lin Yu was practicing some kind of foreign witchcraft, that their marriage was a sham designed to help her avoid deportation. None of it was true, but truth didn't matter when the lies were more interesting. Marcus Wheaton set up an office in Red Hollow and made it known he was available for consultations regarding property disputes, marriage law, and immigration matters. Several people who'd been friendly to Cole and Lin Yu suddenly became distant, worried about being associated with someone who might be on the wrong side of the law. But not everyone bought into Margaret's narrative. Dutch Harrison remained steadfastly supportive, making a point of greeting Lin Yu warmly whenever they crossed paths in town. Tom Bradley, the blacksmith, did the same. And Martha Wickham, despite her husband's discomfort, continued to invite Lin Yu to church and to treat her with genuine kindness. The real surprise came from an unexpected quarter. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Cole heard someone riding up to the ranch. He walked out to find a woman dismounting from a horse, and it took him a moment to recognize her. Clara Jensen, one of the women who'd been part of Margaret's entourage at the church social. "Mrs. Jensen," Cole said warily, "what can I do for you?" Clara looked nervous, her hands twisting in her skirt. "Is your wife here? I need to speak with her." Lin Yue had heard the horse and came out of the house, wiping her hands on her apron. When she saw Clara, her expression became guarded. "Mrs. Jensen?"
"Mrs. Mercer, I need your help." Clara's voice broke slightly. "My son Peter, he's been sick for a week. Fever, cough, trouble breathing. The doctor gave him medicine, but it's not working, and She stopped, tears streaming down her face. "I'm desperate. I know I was cruel to you before. I know I don't deserve your help. But please, he's only 6 years old." Lin Yu looked at Cole, and he could see her weighing the decision. Helping Clara meant exposing herself to more risk. If the boy didn't improve, or worse, if he died, Clara could claim Lin Yue had harmed him. But if she refused to help, she'd be proving Margaret's point, that she was selfish and didn't care about the community. "Let me get my things," Lin Yue said. She went inside and returned with a small bag of herbs and remedies she'd been putting together. Cole watched her work with something like awe. She'd been hurt by these people, rejected and insulted, and yet when one of them came to her in need, she didn't hesitate. "I will come with you," Lin Yue said. "I need to see the child to know what treatment to give." Clara looked relieved and terrified at once. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Cole stepped forward. "I'm coming too." Lin Yu started to protest, but Cole cut her off. "I'm not letting you walk into a situation where you could be accused of something without a witness." She understood immediately and nodded. They rode to the Jensen farm, a small property on the outskirts of Red Hollow. The house was modest but well kept, and Clara led them inside to a small bedroom where a little boy lay in bed, his face flushed with fever and his breathing labored. Lin Yu knelt beside the bed and examined him carefully, feeling his forehead, listening to his breathing, checking his throat. Cole watched from the doorway as she worked, noting the gentle way she touched the child, the calm competence in her movements. "It is infection in the chest," she said finally. "Bad, but not beyond help." She opened her bag and began preparing a remedy, mixing herbs in specific proportions while explaining to Clara what each one did. "This will help break the fever and clear the congestion. You must give him this 3 times a day and keep him drinking water, lots of water." "That's it?" Clara looked skeptical. "That is the start. I will also show you how to help him breathe better." Lin Yue demonstrated a technique involving steam and positioning and made Clara practice it until she could do it correctly. Then she prepared several more doses of the medicine and left detailed instructions. "If he is not better in 2 days, come find me," Lin Yue said. "But he should improve." Clara clutched the medicine like it was precious. "How much do I owe you?" "Nothing." "But you owe me nothing. Just take care of your son." They were preparing to leave when Clara spoke again, her voice small. "I'm sorry for how I treated you, for the things I said. You didn't deserve any of it." Lin Yue paused at the door. "No, I did not, but I understand fear makes people cruel. I hope your son recovers quickly." On the ride back to the ranch, Cole looked at his wife with new respect. "You know that could backfire, right? If the kid doesn't get better, she could blame you." "I know, but I could not refuse to help a sick child. Even though his mother was part of the group trying to run you out of town? Even then," Lin Yue looked at him. "I do not do good things because people deserve them. I do them because it is who I am. Margaret cannot take that from me." Cole reached over and took her hand. "You're a better person than most, you know that? I'm just trying to survive in a world that does not want me. Kindness is my best weapon." 2 days later, Clara Jensen came to the ranch again, but this time she was smiling. Peter's fever had broken, and he was already asking for food and wanting to play. She pressed money into Lin Yue's hand despite her protests, and then did something unexpected. She hugged her. "You saved my boy," Clara said. "I won't forget that, and I won't stand by and let people say cruel things about you anymore." Word of Peter Jensen's recovery spread through town, and with it came a subtle shift. Not everyone changed their minds about Lin Yue, but enough did that the atmosphere started to feel less hostile. Women began seeking her out for remedies, at first furtively, then more openly. Lin Yue helped everyone who asked, never charging more than a token amount, and slowly she built a reputation as a healer rather than a threat.
Margaret noticed, of course, and she didn't take it well. The confrontation happened at the general store 3 weeks after Peter Jensen recovered. Lin Yue was there, picking up supplies, when Margaret walked in with Marcus Wheaton at her side. The store went quiet, everyone sensing the coming storm. Margaret approached Lin Yue slowly, deliberately, her face a mask of controlled fury. "Playing doctor now, are we?" Margaret's voice carried through the store. "How many people have to get sick before the law steps in and stops this dangerous charade?" Lin Yue continued examining a bolt of fabric, not looking up. "I have helped many people. None have complained." "Of course they haven't. They're too afraid of whatever spell you've put on them." Margaret turned to address the other customers. "This woman practices foreign medicine with no training, no license, nothing but superstition and luck. And we're supposed to trust her with our lives?" "My mother was a healer for 40 years, Lin Yue said calmly. "She taught me everything she knew. That is my training." "Training from a Chinese peasant woman," Wheaton interjected smoothly. "Hardly the equivalent of a medical degree from an American institution." "No, it is better." Lin Yue finally looked up, meeting Margaret's eyes. "Because I care about healing people, not making money. Because I remember that medicine is about compassion, not control." Margaret's face flushed red. "You arrogant little—" "Careful, Margaret." The new voice came from the doorway, and everyone turned to see Dutch Harrison standing there. "You're about to say something you can't take back." "This doesn't concern you, Dutch." "It concerns me when I see someone being bullied in public." Dutch walked into the store, his presence commanding attention. "Mrs. Mercer has helped more people in this town in 3 months than you have in 3 years. Maybe instead of attacking her, you should ask yourself why that bothers you so much. She's not even American. Neither were your grandparents when they arrived from Ireland. Funny how that works." Dutch turned to the other customers. "How many of you have been helped by Mrs. Mercer, or know someone who has?" Slowly, hesitantly, hands went up. Clara Jensen, a man whose wife, Lin Yue, had helped with a difficult pregnancy. A woman whose arthritis pain had eased with Lin Yue's remedies. More than half the people in the store raised their hands. "So it seems to me," Dutch continued, "that the only people with a problem here are you and your lawyer friend. Everyone else seems grateful." Marcus Wheaton stepped forward. "Public opinion doesn't change the law, Mr. Harrison, and the law is quite clear about who can practice medicine and who cannot. If Mrs. Mercer continues this activity, I'll be forced to file a formal complaint with the territorial authorities." "You do that," Dutch said, "but I think you'll find that helping your neighbors isn't actually illegal, no matter how much you want it to be." The standoff lasted another moment before Margaret spun on her heel and stalked out, Wheaton following. The tension in the store broke, and people started talking in hushed, excited voices. Dutch approached Lin Yue. "You all right?" "Yes. Thank you for speaking up." "Just stating facts." He tipped his hat. "You keep doing what you're doing, Mrs. Mercer. This town needs more healers and fewer scolds." That evening, when Cole came home, Lin Yue told him everything that had happened. He listened with a growing sense of pride mixed with worry. "Dutch was right to stand up for you," Cole said. "But Wheaton wasn't bluffing about the complaint. If he goes to the territorial authorities, they might actually try to stop you from helping people. Then they try. I will not stop doing what is right because someone threatens me with laws designed to keep people like me powerless." Cole recognized the steel in her voice. This was Lin Yue at her most stubborn, and he loved her for it even as it scared him. "Just be careful, all right? Margaret's dangerous when she's cornered." "I know, but so am I." The next day, Lin Yue was in town when a young woman approached her nervously. She was maybe 16, pale and frightened, and she kept glancing around like she was afraid of being seen. "Mrs. Mercer, can I talk to you privately?" Lin Yue led her to a quiet spot behind the church, out of sight of prying eyes. "What is wrong?" The girl started crying. "I think I might be. I think I'm pregnant, and I can't be. My father would kill me. The boy who... He's already left town, and I don't know what to do." Lin Yue's heart ached for her. "What is your name?" "Sarah. Sarah Mitchell." "Sarah, I cannot make this problem disappear, but I can help you know for certain, and then we can talk about options." "I don't want an abortion," Sarah said quickly. "I know some people, but I couldn't.
But I also can't have a baby. Not now. Not like this. Lin Yue thought carefully. If you're pregnant, there are people who want children but cannot have them. Adoption might be a possibility. But first let me examine you and we will know what we are dealing with.
She took Sarah back to the ranch where she could examine her in private. Cole was out working, which was probably for the best. After a thorough examination and some careful questions, Lin Yue had her answer. You are pregnant, maybe 2 months. Sarah's face crumpled. What do I do?
That depends on what you want, but you do not have to face this alone. Lin Yue sat beside her. There is a couple in the next county who lost a baby last year. They desperately want to be parents. If you decided you wanted to carry this child and give it to them, I could help arrange that. You could stay here until the baby is born, and no one in town would have to know. Sarah looked at her with desperate hope. You would do that? Hide me here? If that is what you want, yes.
But what about your husband? What about... My husband is a good man. He will understand. Lin Yue hoped that was true. But Sarah, you must be certain. This is not a small thing. 9 months is a long time to be away from your family. My family barely notices I exist unless I'm doing something wrong, Sarah said bitterly. And this would be the worst thing I could do in their eyes. Worse than running away. She took a shaky breath. If I could give this baby to people who actually want it, who would love it, that would be better than anything I could give it myself. Lin Yue nodded slowly. This was dangerous territory. If anyone found out she was harboring a pregnant girl, helping arrange an adoption, it would be ammunition for Margaret and Wheaton. But looking at Sarah's frightened face, Lin Yue couldn't turn her away. Then you can stay. We will figure it out together. When Cole came home that evening, he found Lin Yue and a teenage girl sitting at the kitchen table. Lin Yue pulled him aside and explained the situation in low, urgent tones. Cole listened, his expression cycling through surprise, concern, and finally resignation. You know this could blow up in our faces, right? I know, but I could not turn her away. Cole looked through the doorway at Sarah, who was hunched over a cup of tea, looking small and scared. How long would she need to stay? 7 months. Maybe less if the baby comes early. 7 months of hiding a girl whose family will be looking for her. 7 months of Margaret having one more thing to use against us if she finds out. Cole ran his hand through his hair. But you're right. We can't turn her away. Relief flooded through Lin Yue. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We need to be smart about this. If her family comes looking, we need a story that holds up. They spent the next hour working out details. Sarah would write a letter to her family saying she'd gotten a job in the next county and would be gone for a while. It wasn't a great lie, but it was plausible enough. She'd stay at the ranch, help with chores in exchange for room and board, and when the baby came, Lin Yue would help with the birth and the adoption. It was risky. It was potentially disastrous. But it was also the right thing to do, and both Cole and Lin Yue had reached a point where doing the right thing mattered more than playing it safe. Sarah settled into ranch life with surprising ease. She was a hard worker, grateful for the refuge, and within a few weeks it felt almost natural having her there. She slept in the small room that had once been Lin Yue's, and during the day she helped with cooking and cleaning and lighter chores. Cole watched his wife with the girl and saw yet another side of her. Lin Yue was patient and kind, teaching Sarah things her own mother should have taught her, treating her with a respect the girl had probably never experienced. And Sarah bloomed under the attention, becoming more confident, more sure of herself. 2 months passed without incident. Sarah's pregnancy became more visible, and they kept her close to the ranch where fewer people would see. Lin Yue had contacted the couple in the next county, and they'd agreed enthusiastically to the adoption, sending money for Sarah's care and letters expressing their gratitude. Everything seemed to be working. And then Margaret Spencer came calling. She arrived with Marcus Wheaton and Sheriff Tom Garrett, a lazy man who'd been content to ignore most of Margaret's complaints until she'd apparently offered him a compelling reason to care. They rode up to the ranch on a Saturday morning when Cole was in the barn and Lin Yue and Sarah were in the garden. Lin Yue saw them coming and her blood went cold. Sarah, go inside. Stay in your room and do not come out no matter what you hear. Sarah's eyes went wide with fear, but she obeyed, hurrying into the house. Lin Yue stood up, brushing dirt from her hands, and walked to meet the visitors. Cole emerged from the barn, sensing trouble. He positioned himself beside Lin Yue, presenting a united front. Margaret, Sheriff, What can we do for you? Margaret's smile was triumphant. We're here about a missing girl, Sarah Mitchell. Her family is very concerned about her whereabouts. Can't help you, Cole said. Haven't seen her. Really? Because we have information suggesting she might be here. Marcus Wheaton dismounted, pulling out a piece of paper. This is a warrant allowing us to search the premises for Sarah Mitchell, who is a minor and may be in danger. Cole's jaw clenched. This is harassment. This is the law, Wheaton countered. Now, will you allow us to search peacefully, or does the sheriff need to compel your cooperation? There was no good choice. Refusing would make them look guilty and give the sheriff cause to arrest them. Allowing the search meant they'd find Sarah, and then they'd have to explain why they'd been hiding a pregnant teenager. Search if you want, Cole said finally. You won't find anything. But of course they did. Sarah was in her room as instructed, and when Margaret and Wheaton opened the door, they found her sitting on the bed, her pregnancy obvious under her loose dress. Margaret's face lit up with vicious satisfaction. Well, well, what do we have here? Sarah stood, trying to look brave and failing. I came here of my own free will. I'm not being held against my will or anything. That's not how your parents will see it, Margaret said. They think you ran away. They've been worried sick. They don't care about me. They never have. Regardless, you're a minor, and these people have been hiding you. Margaret turned to the sheriff. I believe that constitutes kidnapping, doesn't it? Sheriff Garrett looked uncomfortable. Well, now, that depends on what? The girl is here. They hid her. That's a crime. Cole stepped forward. She asked for help, and we gave it. That's not kidnapping. Perhaps we should let a judge decide that, Marcus Wheaton said smoothly. Sheriff, I think you need to take Mr. and Mrs. Mercer into custody until this can be sorted out properly. Lin Yui felt the world tilting. This was it. This was how Margaret won. Not by driving them out of town or destroying their reputation, but by using the law itself as a weapon. They'd be arrested, maybe convicted, and everything they'd built would be destroyed. But before the sheriff could move, a new voice rang out across the yard. I don't think that'll be necessary. Everyone turned to see Dutch Harrison riding up with Tom Bradley and 4 other men Cole recognized as ranchers from the area. They dismounted in a line, forming a wall of solidarity. What are you doing here, Dutch? Margaret demanded. Heard you were planning to arrest the Mercers. Thought we'd come see for ourselves what crime they supposedly committed. Dutch looked at Sarah. Miss, did these people hurt you in any way? No, they've been nothing but kind to me. Did they force you to stay here? No, I asked if I could stay. They're helping me. Dutch turned to the sheriff. Sounds to me like they gave shelter to someone who needed it. Since when is charity a crime? She's a minor, Wheaton interjected, and they failed to notify her parents of her whereabouts. She wrote her parents a letter, Lin Yu said quietly, telling them she had found work and would be gone for a while. They got that letter, so they knew she was safe, even if they did not know exactly where. Margaret's face was turning an alarming shade of purple. This is outrageous. You're harboring a pregnant girl who came to us for help, Cole finished, because she was scared and alone and needed somewhere safe. We gave her that. I'm not apologizing for it. The standoff lasted a long, tense moment. Sheriff Garrett looked between the two groups, clearly calculating which side would cause him less trouble. Finally, he spoke. Seems to me this is more of a family matter than a criminal one. Maybe Miss Sarah here should talk to her parents, work things out with them. That's not, Margaret started. That's my decision, Garrett said firmly. Unless you've got actual evidence of a crime, not just speculation and moral outrage, I'm not arresting anyone. Margaret looked like she wanted to explode, but Marcus Wheaton put a hand on her arm. This isn't over, he said to Cole, not by a long shot. They left, taking Sarah with them despite her protests. Lin Yue watched the girl go with a sick feeling in her stomach, knowing they'd failed to protect her, knowing whatever happened next would be Sarah's burden to bear. After everyone had gone, Cole and Lin Yu stood in the yard with Dutch and the other men. Thank you, Cole said, for coming. Wasn't going to let them railroad you, Dutch replied. Margaret's gone too far this time. Using that girl as a weapon against you, it's not right. What'll happen to Sarah? Lin Yu asked. Dutch shook his head. I don't know, but I'll talk to her parents, see if I can't help them see reason. The girl made a mistake, but she doesn't deserve to be punished for trying to handle it with dignity. After the men left, Cole and Lin Yu went inside their suddenly too quiet house. They stood in the main room, both feeling the weight of how close they'd come to disaster. "We cannot keep doing this," Lin Yu said. "Fighting Margaret, fighting the law, fighting everyone. It is too much." Cole pulled her close. "I know, but I don't know how to stop. She's not going to give up." "No, she is not." Lin Yu rested her head against his chest. "But neither are we. Because this is our home, and we have every right to be here." They stood there holding each other, drawing strength from their connection, knowing the war with Margaret was far from over. But they had something Margaret didn't have. They had each other. And they had people like Dutch and Tom who believed in them. It would have to be enough. The weeks following Sarah's removal from the ranch felt like living under a constant threat of storm. Cole and Lin Yu went about their daily work with the awareness that any moment could bring another crisis, another attack, another attempt by Margaret to destroy what they'd built. But the attack, when it came, arrived from an unexpected direction. Lin Yu was in town picking up supplies when she overheard two women talking outside the dry goods store. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop. Their voices carried clearly in the afternoon air. "Did you hear? Margaret's son is coming back from the east." "Thomas? I thought he was studying law or something." "He was. But apparently he's finished now, and Margaret's been writing him letters about the situation here, about the Chinese woman and Cole Mercer." "What's he going to do about it?" "I don't know, but you know how Margaret is about her precious boy. If she's got him involved, it can't be good." Lin Yu continued into the store, her mind working. She'd heard Margaret mention her son a few times, always with pride bordering on worship. If he was as formidable as his mother believed, and if he was coming to Red Hollow with the specific purpose of dealing with the Mercer situation, they were in for a new level of trouble. She told Cole that evening over dinner. "Thomas Spencer," Cole said thoughtfully. "I remember him vaguely. He left for college maybe 5 years ago, right before Sarah died. Quiet kid, bookish, nothing like his mother." "People change." "Yeah, they do." Cole set down his fork. "Well, we'll deal with him when he gets here, same as we've dealt with everything else." But Lin Yu could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was set. They were both tired of fighting, tired of being on guard, tired of their life being one long battle for the right to simply exist in peace. That night, lying in bed, Lin Yu turned to Cole. "What if we did leave?" He'd been half asleep, but her words brought him fully awake. "What?" "What if we sold the ranch and went somewhere else? Somewhere where no one knows us, where we could start fresh?" Cole was quiet for a long moment. "Is that what you want?" "I do not know what I want anymore. I am tired, Cole. Tired of fighting. Tired of watching you fight. Every day there is something new, some new attack, some new threat, and I wonder if it will ever end, or if this is just our life now." Cole pulled her closer. "Where would we even go?" "I do not know. California, maybe. Or north, to Oregon. Somewhere with more people, where being different does not mark you as a target. Running away from a problem doesn't make it disappear. Margaret would probably consider it a victory." "I do not care about Margaret's victories. I care about you, about us, about having a life that is more than just survival." Lin Yu's voice cracked slightly. "I want to wake up without wondering what fresh hell the day will bring. Is that too much to ask?" Cole didn't answer immediately. He was thinking about the ranch, the land he'd worked since he was a boy, the house he'd built with his father, the place where Sarah was buried. Leaving felt like abandoning all of that, like admitting defeat. But staying meant continuing to put Lin Yu through this constant siege. And when had his stubborn attachment to land become more important than the woman he loved? "Let me think about it," he said finally. Not saying no, just, "Let me think." 3 days later, Thomas Spencer arrived in Red Hollow. Cole was in town when he first saw him, a tall man in his mid-20s, dressed in a suit that was far too fine for Red Hollow's dusty streets. He had his mother's blonde hair but a softer face, and when he smiled at people greeting him, there was something genuine in it that Margaret had never possessed. He was talking to the Reverend outside the church, and Cole couldn't help but notice how people were drawn to him. Women smiled, men shook his hand, and even children seemed charmed by whatever he was saying. He had charisma, this Thomas Spencer. The kind of easy magnetism that made people want to believe him, to trust him, which made him potentially much more dangerous than his mother. Cole was about to continue on his way when Thomas looked up and their eyes met. For a moment, Cole saw something flicker in the younger man's expression: recognition, calculation, maybe curiosity. Then Thomas excused himself from the Reverend and walked over. "Mr. Mercer, I presume." He extended his hand. "Thomas Spencer. I don't think we've formally met." Cole shook his hand warily. "We haven't. I've heard a lot about you. And your wife." Thomas's smile didn't waver. "I was hoping we might have a conversation sometime. Clear the air, so to speak." "Nothing to clear. Your mother's made her position pretty clear." "My mother has strong opinions, yes, but I'm not my mother." Thomas glanced around at the people watching them. "Perhaps we could talk somewhere more private? The saloon, maybe? I'll buy you a drink." Cole's instinct was to refuse, but something in Thomas's manner, the directness of his gaze, the lack of his mother's venom, made him reconsider. "Know your enemy," Sarah used to say. And right now, Cole wasn't sure if Thomas was an enemy or something else entirely. "One drink," Cole said. The saloon was half empty at this time of day. They took a table in the corner, and Thomas ordered whiskey for both of them. For a moment they sat in silence, sizing each other up. "I'll be direct," Thomas said finally. "I know what my mother's been doing, the harassment, the legal maneuvering, the constant attacks. And I want you to know that I don't approve." Cole raised an eyebrow. "That's so. I left Red Hollow to get away from this kind of small-minded bigotry. Studied at a university where half my classmates were from different countries, different backgrounds. Made me see how ridiculous it is to judge someone based on where they were born or what they look like." He took a sip of his whiskey. "When my mother wrote me about you marrying a Chinese woman, she expected me to be horrified. I wasn't. I was curious about what kind of man would defy an entire town for someone he loved." "Is that what she told you? That I love her?" "No, she said you were bewitched, corrupted, led astray by foreign influence." Thomas smiled wryly. "But I read between the lines. My mother only gets that furious when someone finds happiness she doesn't approve of." Cole studied the younger man, trying to detect deception. But Thomas seemed sincere. "So why are you here?" "Honestly, because my mother begged me to come home and fix things. She thought having a lawyer in the family would give her ammunition against you." Thomas leaned forward. "But I'm not here to destroy you, Mr. Mercer. I'm here to see if I can't convince my mother to stand down before she destroys herself." "Good luck with that. I know it's a long shot, but I have to try." Thomas finished his drink. "Look, I can't undo the damage she's already done, but I can maybe prevent future damage, if you're willing to trust me." "Trust is a big ask." "It is. But consider this. I have nothing to gain from continuing my mother's crusade. I don't live here. I don't care about Red Hollow's social hierarchy. All I care about is getting my mother to let this go before it consumes her completely." He stood, preparing to leave. "Think about it. And if you're willing, I'd like to meet your wife. Form my own opinion instead of relying on my mother's propaganda." After Thomas left, Cole sat alone with his whiskey, trying to make sense of the conversation. It could be a trap. Thomas could be playing a long game, earning their trust before delivering a more devastating blow. But something in his gut told Cole the younger man was sincere. He told Lin Yue about it that evening, and she had the same suspicious reaction he'd had. It could be a trick. Could be. But what if it's not? What if he actually can get Margaret to back off? Lin Yue paced the kitchen, thinking. What does he want in return? He wants to meet you, form his own opinion. About whether I'm worthy of existing in his mother's town. The bitterness in her voice was sharp. About whether his mother's been lying to him, I think. Cole caught her hand as she passed. We don't have to do this. We can tell him to go to hell and continue as we have been. But Lin Yue, what if this is a way out? A way to end this without having to leave? She looked at him and he could see the exhaustion in her eyes. The constant vigilance, the endless fighting, it was wearing both of them down to nothing. All right, she said finally, he can come here, to the ranch, on our territory, where we control the situation. I'll let him know. Thomas came to the ranch 2 days later, alone as requested, riding a rented horse that clearly made him uncomfortable. Cole met him in the yard, and they stood in awkward silence for a moment before Lin Yue emerged from the house. She'd dressed carefully. Not her work clothes, but not her best dress either. something that said she was making an effort but not trying too hard. Her hair was pulled back simply, and she met Thomas's eyes with a directness that bordered on challenge. "Mr. Spencer, Mrs. Mercer, thank you for agreeing to meet with me." Thomas removed his hat. "I know this must be strange for you." Strange is one word for it. They went inside, and Lin Yu served tea she'd made from her precious store of leaves brought from China. Thomas accepted it with what appeared to be genuine appreciation, and the three of them sat in the main room like civilized people pretending this wasn't a bizarre situation. "I'll be honest with you both," Thomas said. "I've spent the last 2 days talking to people in town, getting their perspectives on you, on your marriage, on everything that's happened, and what I've found is very different from what my mother led me to believe." "What did you find?" Lin Yue asked. "That you're respected, that you've helped people when they needed it, that the only ones who still have a problem with you are my mother and her particular circle of friends." Thomas set down his teacup. "I also learned about Sarah Mitchell, about how you tried to help a scared girl, and my mother used it as a weapon against you." "Where is Sarah now?" Lin Yue couldn't help asking. "With her aunt in the next county. Her parents were not understanding, but her aunt is more compassionate. The baby will be adopted by the couple you'd arranged, and Sarah will have a chance to start over." Thomas looked at her directly. "Because of the foundation you laid, the help you gave her when she needed it most." Lin Yu felt something release in her chest. Sarah was safe. The baby would be loved. It wasn't a perfect outcome, but it was better than she'd feared. "My mother sees the world in very simple terms," Thomas continued. "Right and wrong, proper and improper, us and them. She can't conceive of a reality where someone different from her might have value." He looked between them. "But I've seen enough of the world to know that's nonsense. People are people. Some are good, some are bad, and most are somewhere in between. And from what I can tell, you two are firmly in the good category." "Your mother won't see it that way," Cole said. "No, she won't," Thomas sighed. "But she might listen to me, especially if I can convince her that continuing this crusade will cost her the one thing she values most, her social standing. Because the more I talk to people, the more I realize the town is turning against her. Not in favor of you necessarily, but definitely away from her. She's pushed too hard, been too cruel, and people are getting tired of it." "So what are you proposing?" Lin Yu asked. "I propose that I go to my mother and give her a choice. She can continue her campaign against you, knowing that it will increasingly isolate her and damage her reputation. Or she can accept defeat gracefully, claim that she's seen the error of her ways, and retreat with at least some dignity intact." Cole laughed without humor. "Margaret Spencer admit she was wrong? That'll be the day. She won't admit she was wrong. She'll just find a way to reframe the situation that lets her save face. Maybe she'll say she's grown more tolerant. Maybe she'll claim she was misinformed. I don't care what lies she tells herself as long as she stops attacking you." It was a reasonable plan, more reasonable than Cole had any right to expect. But there was one problem. "What's in this for you?" he asked. "Really?" Thomas was quiet for a moment, and something painful crossed his face. "My mother raised me alone after my father died. Poured everything into me, her hopes and dreams and ambitions. I love her, despite her flaws. But I also see what this hatred is doing to her. It's consuming her, turning her into something ugly and bitter. And if I can stop that, if I can give her a way out that lets her retain some humanity, then maybe I can save her from herself." He looked up. "That's what's in it for me. The chance to get my mother back." The raw honesty in his voice was hard to argue with. Cole glanced at Lin Yue, and she gave a small nod. "All right," Cole said. "You talk to your mother. See if you can get her to stand down. But if this is a trick, if you're playing us, it's not a trick. I give you my word." Thomas stood. "And regardless of what happens with my mother, I want you to know something. You've done nothing wrong, either of you. You fell in love, you got married, you built a life together. That's not a crime or a sin or anything else people want to call it. It's just living, and you deserve to do that in peace." After Thomas left, Cole and Lin Yu sat together on the couch, processing what had just happened. "Do you believe him?" Lin Yu asked. "I think I do. He seemed genuine. But will it work? Will Margaret actually listen?" Cole pulled her close. "I don't know. But for the first time in months, I have hope that this might end without us having to run." The confrontation between Thomas and his mother happened 3 days later, and while Cole and Lin Yue weren't present for it,
They heard about it from multiple sources.
Thomas had gone to his mother's house and they'd argued for hours. Voices were raised loud enough that neighbors heard. At one point, something crashed, a vase or a plate. But eventually, the house had gone quiet. The next day, Margaret appeared at the church social, looking pale and diminished. She didn't speak to anyone about the Mercers, didn't make snide comments or spread rumors. She simply sat with her usual group of friends and said nothing. The day after that, Marcus Wheaton left town. And the day after that, Margaret Spencer herself left Red Hollow, claiming she needed to visit relatives back east and would be gone for several months. The town exhaled collectively. The war was over. Not with a dramatic confrontation or legal battle, but with Margaret's quiet retreat. People speculated endlessly about what Thomas had said to her, but he kept those details private. All he would say when asked was that his mother had decided she needed a change of scenery. Cole and Lin Yu hardly dared to believe it. They kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Margaret to return with reinforcements, for some new attack to emerge. But weeks passed, and nothing happened. Life settled into something approximating normal. Lin Yu continued helping people with their medical needs, and now she did so openly, without fear. Women came to the ranch regularly seeking remedies and advice. The Reverend's wife even asked her to teach a class on herbal medicine at the church, which Lin Yu accepted with cautious pride. Cole's relationships with neighboring ranchers improved. Dutch Harrison became a genuine friend, stopping by regularly for coffee and conversation. Even Samuel Pike, after the fence incident was resolved, developed a grudging respect for Cole's integrity, and slowly, the Mercers became part of Red Hollow's fabric, rather than a stain on it. 6 months after Margaret left, Lin Yu discovered she was pregnant. She sat in the bedroom staring at the signs her body was showing, her emotions a complicated tangle of joy and terror. They'd never talked about children. After what had happened to Sarah and the baby, Cole had never mentioned wanting to try again, and Lin Yu had been too focused on survival to think about bringing a child into their chaotic world. But now, with peace settling over their lives like gentle rain, the reality of a baby felt both miraculous and frightening. She told Cole that evening, just blurting it out over dinner because she couldn't think of a better way. "I am pregnant." Cole's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. He set it down carefully, his face cycling through shock, fear, and then something that might have been wonder. "You're sure?" "Yes. About 3 months, I think." He was quiet for so long that Lin Yu started to worry. Then he stood up, walked around the table, and pulled her into his arms so tightly she could barely breathe. "Are you happy?" she asked into his chest. "I'm terrified," he said honestly. "After what happened with Sarah, I never let myself hope." He pulled back to look at her face. "But yeah, I'm happy, scared out of my mind, but happy." "Me too." They stood there in the kitchen, holding each other, feeling the weight and promise of new life between them. The pregnancy was hard. Lin Yu was sick for the first 4 months, exhausted for the next 2, and uncomfortable for the final 3. Cole watched her with the protective intensity of someone who'd lost everything once before and was determined not to lose it again. He brought her tea when she was nauseous, rubbed her feet when they swelled, and read to her on the nights when she couldn't sleep. Martha Wickham came by regularly to check on her, bringing food and company and reassurance. Dutch's wife visited too, sharing her own experiences with pregnancy and motherhood. For the first time since arriving in Red Hollow, Lin Yu felt like she had a community. Not everyone accepted her. There were still people who crossed the street to avoid her, who whispered when she passed. But enough people cared that it mattered. Enough people had decided she belonged. The baby came on a cold March night, arriving weeks earlier than expected and in a hurry. Cole rode for the doctor while Martha stayed with Lin Yue, coaching her through contractions and preparing the bedroom. By the time the doctor arrived, Lin Yue was already deep in labor, her face slick with sweat and her hands gripping the bed sheets hard enough to tear them. Cole stood beside her, letting her squeeze his hand until he thought bones might break, murmuring encouragement that probably didn't help, but he couldn't stop himself from giving. The labor lasted 6 hours, an eternity and an instant all at once. And then, with a final push and a scream that tore from Lin Yue's throat, their daughter entered the world. She was tiny and red and screaming. And when the doctor placed her in Lin Yue's arms, Cole felt something crack open in his chest that he thought was permanently sealed shut.
She's perfect, he whispered. She is loud, Lin Yue said, but she was smiling through exhausted tears. They named her Rose, after the wild roses that grew along the fence line every spring. Rose Mercer, a child of two worlds, born into a place that had tried to reject her mother but would have to accept her daughter. The first few months were brutal. Rose was colicky and rarely slept more than 2 hours at a stretch. Lin Yu and Cole stumbled through their days in an exhausted haze, taking turns walking the baby at night, learning through trial and error what she needed. But even in the exhaustion, there was joy. The first time Rose smiled at Cole, he cried. When she grabbed Lin Yue's finger and held on tight, Lin Yue felt her heart expand in ways she hadn't known were possible. They were a family now. Imperfect, unconventional, held together by love that had survived everything the world threw at it. One evening, when Rose was about 4 months old, Cole and Lin Yu were sitting on the porch watching the sunset while Rose dozed in her mother's arms. It had been a good day. The ranch was thriving, the weather was mild, and for once the baby had been content. "You ever think about how far we've come?" Cole asked. Lin Yu looked at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean, when you first arrived in Red Hollow, you were alone and terrified and had nowhere to go. And I was a bitter widower who'd given up on everything but surviving. Look at us now. We have a baby who screams constantly and never sleeps. Very impressive." Cole laughed. "Beyond that, we have a home, we have friends, we have a life that's actually worth living." He reached over and took her hand. "You did that. You transformed everything." "We did that," Lin Yue corrected. "I could not have survived here alone. It was your choice to help me, your choice to stand up for me, your choice to love me. That made the difference." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to purple. "Do you ever regret it?" Lin Yu asked quietly. "Choosing me? All the trouble it brought?" Cole considered the question seriously. He thought about everything they'd endured, the hostility, the legal threats, the constant battle for acceptance. He thought about the easier life he could have had if he'd just turned away that first night, if he'd left Lin Yu sitting alone on that bench with nowhere to go. "No," he said, finally. "I don't regret it, not for a second, because that trouble also brought us this." He gestured at the ranch, at the baby in Lin Yu's arms, at the life they'd built together. "And this is worth everything." Lin Yue leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you. I love you too." It was simple and true and enough. The years that followed brought their own challenges. Rose grew into a spirited child who asked too many questions and climbed things she shouldn't. They had a son 2 years later, Daniel, who was quieter but just as determined. The ranch expanded. Cole took on more land, hired help, built the operation into something sustainable. Lin Yue's reputation as a healer grew beyond Red Hollow. People traveled from neighboring towns to seek her help, and she treated everyone who came regardless of their ability to pay. She taught her children about herbs and medicine, passing on the knowledge her mother had given her. Thomas Spencer became an unlikely friend, visiting whenever he was in the area and bringing gifts for the children. He eventually married a woman from Boston who was as unconventional as he was, and they settled in a city far from Red Hollow where they could live freely. Margaret never returned to Red Hollow. They heard through Thomas that she'd found a life back east, surrounded by people who shared her narrow worldview. She never acknowledged her grandchildren, never sent word or made any attempt at reconciliation. Thomas seemed sad about it, but not surprised. "Some people," he told them once, "are so committed to their hatreds that they'll sacrifice everything else to maintain them. My mother chose her prejudices over her family. That's her loss, not yours." Dutch Harrison's daughter, Emma, the girl Lin Yue had saved with her remedies, grew up to become a teacher. She credited Lin Yu with inspiring her desire to help others, and she made a point of teaching her students that people from different backgrounds had valuable knowledge to share. The town changed slowly, not dramatically, not overnight, but in small increments that added up to something meaningful. More immigrants arrived, Irish, Italian, Mexican, and while they faced their own struggles, they found in the Mercers an example of what was possible. If a Chinese woman and her cowboy husband could build a life in Red Hollow, maybe others could too. On their 10th anniversary, Cole and Lin Yue rode out to the spot where he'd first brought her when she had nowhere else to go. The ranch looked different now, More buildings, better fences, signs of prosperity and care. But the land itself was unchanged, still vast and beautiful and harsh. "You ever think about leaving?" Cole asked. "Going somewhere easier?" Lin Yui shook her head. "This is home. Not because it was easy, but because we made it ours. Every fence we built, every battle we fought, every morning we woke up and chose to stay. That is what makes it home." "No regrets?" "Many regrets. I regret the cruelty we faced. I regret that our children will grow up knowing some people hate them for who they are. I regret that Sarah died too young and we could not save her." Lin Yue looked at him with eyes that had seen too much pain and too much joy. "But I do not regret you. I do not regret us. And I do not regret choosing to fight for this life instead of running from it." Cole kissed her there on the hillside overlooking their ranch, and it felt like both an ending and a beginning. The struggle wasn't over. There would always be people like Margaret, always be those who saw difference as threat. But they'd proven that love was stronger than hate, that persistence could outlast prejudice, that home wasn't a place you found but something you built with your own hands. 20 years later, when Rose brought her own husband home to meet her parents, she found them still on the ranch, still working the land, still fiercely devoted to each other. Her husband was nervous. He'd heard stories about Red Hollow's past, about the battles her parents had fought. But when he met Lin Yu and Cole, what he found was not battle-scarred warriors, but simply two people who'd loved each other through everything and come out the other side intact. Older now, with gray in their hair and lines on their faces, but still unmistakably them. Still strong. Still together. "Your mother," he said to Rose later, "she's remarkable." "She is," Rose agreed. "She came to a place that didn't want her and made it her home anyway, not by changing who she was, but by refusing to leave. That's the kind of strength most people never find." "And your father?" "He saw someone who needed help and gave it. Then he saw someone worth loving and loved her. That's not complicated. It's just rare." The husband looked back at the ranch house where Lin Yu and Cole were preparing dinner together, moving around each other with the ease of long practice, and he understood. This was what love looked like when it survived. Not perfect, not easy, but real and lasting and worth everything it cost. In the end, Lin Yu's story was not about a stranger becoming accepted. It was about a woman who refused to let other people's hatred define her worth. She'd arrived in Red Hollow with nothing, been rejected by everyone, and somehow built a life that mattered. Not because the town eventually came around, though some did, but because she'd found one person willing to stand with her, and that had been enough to start with. Everything else, the friends, the family, the community, the legacy, had grown from that single choice. Cole's choice to offer shelter. Lin Yu's choice to accept it. Their choice to turn a marriage of convenience into something real. The ranch still stood decades later, long after both Cole and Lin Yu were gone. Their children and grandchildren worked the land, carrying on the legacy of two people who'd refused to give up. And in Red Hollow, which had grown and changed and become something more tolerant than it had been, people still told the story of the Chinese woman who'd arrived with nothing and the cowboy who'd given her a chance. Not as a fairy tale, because fairy tales were easy and their story had been anything but as a reminder that home wasn't about being born in the right place or having the right appearance or meeting someone else's definition of belonging. Home was what you made when you decided you deserved to exist in a space and refused to be moved. That was Lin Yu's gift to Red Hollow, though the town took years to understand it. She'd shown them that the measure of a community wasn't how it treated people who looked like everyone else, but how it treated those who were different. And in choosing cruelty, Red Hollow had diminished itself. In finally choosing acceptance, it had become something better. But Lin Yu hadn't waited for that acceptance. She'd built her life anyway, on her own terms, with her own hands and the help of the man who loved her. And in doing so, she'd proved that you didn't need permission to belong. You just needed courage, persistence, and at least one person who believed you were worth defending. That was enough. That would always be enough. And so the story ended not with triumph or vindication or the town begging forgiveness, but with something simpler and more profound. Two people who'd chosen each other against all odds, who'd built a home in hostile territory, who'd raised children and grew old and loved each other through it all. That was the victory. Not changing the world, but refusing to let the world change who they were. That was everything.